Hello, everyone. I am Melissa Forziat. I'm a keynote speaker and a host of this Halt and Catch Fire rewatch podcast. When I speak, my topic is something I call Take the Doughnut, which for me is another way to say carpe diem, go after the things you want in life. Something I wanted to do this year was to rewatch the show Halt and Catch Fire and talk about it with other people this time, particularly for an episode like this. And here we are, ready to commiserate together. Look, this is the big one, right? This is the big one. For those who are brand new to this show, if you are watching it for the first time and you're coming to this podcast as you're watching, we are here for you. You have found your community. We all get it. Feel free to grieve in the comments and we'll try to support each other. This is a hard one. This is a really hard episode, and it is a hard episode to deep dive into. I found it more difficult to deep dive into than I have on any previous watch of this episode. So I get it, you get it. And to everybody who knows this show really well, who's been along for the ride with me, especially in real time as I've been uploading these podcast episodes, I just want to say what heroic efforts you've all gone to not spoil people on this very significant plot point of Gordon dying. R.I.P. Gordon. Look, when you deep dive on an episode like this, on a show like this, and you get all the way back to season 1, you get scenes like Gordon sees a flower in growing in the motherboard, or Gordon digs a literal grave-sized hole in his backyard in season 1. It is very, very difficult to hold back all of the things that you're thinking. But on this particular point, we have all been doing it. So while we have been deep diving with a fine-tooth comb every single other detail of this show, we get to stuff like Gordon digging a grave-sized hole and we go, that was weird. Wonder why he did something like that. Thank you to everybody who's been commenting for preserving this spoiler, for preserving this plot point and not spoiling it. Because I think, the reward for that, if you can call it a reward, is that people get to this episode and it hits them like a ton of bricks. And it's so interesting to me because now that we've been going through this series in detail, there are so many things that foreshadow his death from season 1 to now. And yet, on these Halt and Catch Fire streets, I find that for a lot of people, Gordon dying actually takes them by surprise. And I think that that's a product of just the way we've grown so close to these characters. Like Gordon has been living with an illness for so long now that it just feels like he'll live with it for the rest of the series. And, we're too close to let any of these characters go. And we just came off of a health scare with Boz, so surely they won't do it again. And then they do. So we're going to get into it today. I'll say that this is an episode of sort of two, maybe not halves, but 2 parts. There's like all the stuff that leads up to Gordon's death, and then there's Gordon's death and beyond. And for me, all the stuff that leads up to it makes it hit even harder at the end. So let's get into this, shall we? As reluctant as we are. This is season 4, episode 7. It's Who Needs a Guy? Before we talk about it, just a quick reminder, if you didn't catch the last interview, you really should. It's with Joshua Hoover, who played Bodhi for seasons 2 and 3. He's part of the Mutiny team, one of the most requested interviews. And I think that when you see this interview, you're going to see exactly why Joshua was so good. He didn't want to, he brought props. He brought stories. He shouted people out. It was so good. I hope you enjoy that interview. It will be a totally different tone than what we're going to set here in this episode. Because today we're talking about, again, season 4, episode 7, Who Needs a Guy? This originally aired September 30th, 2017. It was directed by Trisha Brock, written by Lisa Albert. Here's the description. Having lost her claim on Rover, Donna gives Gordon an idea for Comet's direction, much to Joe's confusion. Cameron starts work on a new game, and Boz and Diane get married. Amidst all of this, something tragic occurs. Sure does. Before we get into the breakdown of these scenes, just so you know, because we are getting close to the end of the episode recaps, so a few notes that I want to give you on that. First of all, if you've been commenting in real time and you look for your feedback on this screen, I just want you to be aware that I have about a week of travel coming up for a couple of keynotes right as I get to the last episode. So recording schedule, I plan to record my podcast for episode 409 on October 12th, and my podcast for episode 410 on October 13th, which will be an absolute gauntlet and very, very challenging to do. But if you want to get some comments in for that, feel free to make sure that you're putting your thoughts in the YouTube comments, even if you need to say spoiler first, or if you want to reach me directly on Instagram, or there's an email address attached to my website. Those are a couple ways to get feedback in as well. So just be aware of that. And if this episode has you feeling that sense of mourning, and you know that the episode recaps are coming to a close and you're mourning that, I've got so much more interview content still to come. And when the episode recaps are done, I'm going to start a new segment on Mondays of like subject matter related interviews. I've been interviewing people from outside of the world of Halt and Catch Fire, and subjects that are related to something that we see in Halt and Catch Fire. And so that's going to be a fun way for us to get to know the show a little better, and hopefully to even bring new people in who may have not heard of the show before. So there's a lot of content still coming, even after the episode recaps are done. Okay, having said all of that, let's get into the scene by scene breakdown, shall we? Okay, first of all, we're going to start with some blaring music. We kind of see the reverse of how we closed the last episode, where we saw, the Airstream with the, Cam's now connected to the internet. Cam's now got a phone, and we saw the amplifier on the top, the dish on the top of the Airstream. So now we're going to see that again at the start of the episode. We've got music blaring. We've got the exterior of the Airstream with that dish on top. We're going to go inside the Airstream, and it's just chaos. It's the chaos of Cam's mind. We're seeing things really close up, quick cuts between them. We're getting rough sketches of these characters in her game. We're getting a close-up of Cam as she types, as she chews her finger, more sketches. We're getting write-ups of character descriptions, so we're seeing a couple called Gazebo and Bing, and the way that she's building the characters is around giving them values to different character traits like strength, speed, height, mass, curiosity, courage, friendliness, suspicion, intelligence, endurance, and skill. Those are the numbers she's using to rate them. It made me actually kind of wonder, because I don't know anything about coding, so it made me wonder if how a computer would know, when you're programming it, what these things are and how that relates to how the figures on screen are moving. All of this feels like very handheld camera, up close, a lot of quick cuts, or really not even cuts, more like removing frames, so it looks like time is passing, but Cam continues to stay in her underwear in the same place working. So she's spending a lot of time working on this game, we're finding. The way this was shot kind of reminded me back in season 1 when they show her playing Centipede, and it's very even that, we're getting the quick cuts, we're seeing Centipede in her eyes, we're seeing just when they show us the inside of Cam's brain, it's moving really quickly. Okay, so the phone rings through all of this. The answering machine's going to pick it up because she's screening her calls. We hear a voice on the answering machine. Hey, Cam, it's Boz. Her eyes go wide. She goes up to, she's going to pick up a call from Boz at this point. So he's like, look, if you get this in the next few hours, she picks up really quickly. She crosses the Airstream to get the phone. She's hello. I think it's worth noting that we never actually saw her reconnect with Boz after his heart attack. And I think that must have happened. We saw last episode, at the beginning of the episode, Cam saying, we should go visit Boz. We see Joe go talk to Boz, but we don't see Cam do it. I think she must have. I think that there are things in this episode that make it feel like she's already had the conversations that she needs to. She felt, really regretful of how she handled Boz before his heart attack. I feel like she's already had the conversation to undo that. We're going to see later in this episode that she sees Diane, or pretty soon, actually, in this episode, she's going to see Diane. And there's not any of that, hey, remember back in the day when you voted me out of mutiny? Like, that's not being discussed. So I feel like she must have gone to visit Boz maybe more than once post heart attack, and she's probably worked out all of those kinks already. So now she's just at the point where she's picking up his phone calls. He's in his garage. He says, what, are you screening your calls? She says, no, I wasn't. As she goes over to get herself some more coffee so she can keep working, he says, no, it's all right. I'm just glad I still rate a pickup. He won the screening the calls battle. She says, of course you do. He says, hey, listen, what are you doing in the next few hours? As she's pouring coffee, she's looking to do more work. She says, I don't know. I'm just here. He says, I need you to meet me in Palo Alto at noon. She says, everything okay? No, everything's fine. I just need a quick favor. Last time he needed a quick favor, that was not good. So she gets nervous about this. She's like, Boz, please don't ask me to do something. He says, no, it has nothing to do with work. I just need you to meet me at 350 Hamilton Avenue at noon. Can you do that for me? She doesn't really want to. She needs to get this work done. She wants to get this work done. She's very tunnel vision focused right now. She says, what's this about? Does it need to be today? He's going to take that as a yes. He's like, that's my girl, 350 Hamilton, don't be late. She's skeptical, but she says, okay, she hangs up. Okay, so something's about to happen for Boz. We don't know what yet. But next we're going to see Gordon and Joni in Gordon's kitchen. It's the morning, they're getting ready. He's reading the paper, she's fixing Rice Krispies, and Haley walks in. Haley with her hair chopped, and it's not a good cut. She did it herself. She just took some scissors. It's not even. It's a mess. It is a rage haircut. She is so angry. Like, she's milkshake throwing level angry still with Gordon, and she's going to take it out on her own hair as a spiteful move against him. And so she comes in with this haircut looking very pleased with herself, more as a passive aggressive move than anything else. It's an act of rebellion. Gordon's face drops for a second, but then he's going to spend the rest of this scene being like, I cannot react to this. Like, this is a rage haircut and I will not react. Joni just pauses as she's pouring milk into her Rice Krispies. Haley's like, good morning. So passive aggressive. Joni's like, holy shit. Gordon goes back to reading his paper like nothing is wrong. Cannot show that something is wrong here. Can't do it. That will get him nowhere. He says, good morning. Haley smiles at Joni. Joni's mouth is just hanging open. Like, Joni has done some things in her day, but never this, okay? Gordon says, so wasn't there something you were supposed to give me yesterday? She's like, Haley says, what do you mean? He says, your biology test. Weren't you getting that back yesterday? She pours herself some cereal. She says, yeah, I did. I got an A. He says, terrific. Where is it? He's just reading his paper, not looking at her. Don't look. She pauses. She's like, you want to see it? He says, yes. Yes, I would. She says, well, if I say I got an A, I got an A. Don't you trust me? Gordon's looking at her. He looks at her for a moment because he can't look at her for long. He's like, well, if that's true, then maybe we can talk about you coming back to Comet a few days a week. She says, but I don't want to. Now Gordon looks at her. Joni looks at Gordon. She is waiting for some sort of explosion to happen here. Like, Joni's living for this. Haley says, you said I would keep working there as long as it was fun, and it's not fun anymore. She says her words with emphasis. She's sort of clipping them. She's like, and it's not funny. I mean, talk about sass. Well, maybe not sass, just like there's an edge here. So she leaves. Gordon sighs. He goes back to reading the paper. Joni is just watching all of this. Like, I thought there was going to be an explosion. Why not? She says, you're seriously not going to talk about the haircut. Gordon says, do you seriously think that would help? Good point. It would likely not help. I think we can all acknowledge that, including Joni. You pause there. So you may know that in the past, I have covered one other show before in a podcast. It was an audio only podcast with my friend Fish about the show Felicity. And if you know two things about the show Felicity, you know it was a girl who was in college who got a really bad haircut. I mean, look, the really bad haircut piece, the jury's out. Like, you may think different things about the haircut. I get it. It was universally, though, criticized. However people feel, if you liked it, you probably aren't saying it because it was like, this is the worst haircut of all time. But the show is infamous for the haircut because unfairly, it is also attributed with the ratings drop of the show, which is not a fair thing to say because the show also, there were other factors. For example, the show, they changed the nights that it aired right at the same time. So there's a lot of factors contributing to the ratings drop. But people have not a lot of nice things to say, a lot of mean things to say about this haircut. And because of the ratings drop, there's tell that the WB had a policy going like female leads cannot change their hair while they're leading a show anymore. And so it affected a lot of things. It's something that's still referenced in pop culture at times. You'll see there are a number of mentions of it in other shows, and it's not a good thing. So it did make me wonder when you get this with Haley cutting her hair. Haley is not the lead of the show. She's not like top of the call sheet. Susanna Skaggs isn't top of the call sheet, but she's still a really important character. So I did wonder, like, beyond how Susanna felt about the haircut herself, like, was there anybody on set that was thinking about that moment in this other show, thinking like, oh, maybe we should be careful? It doesn't seem like it. I've been, as I've been doing interviews, I've been trying to gather some of that information, and I haven't gotten a sense of that yet, but I do think it called that to mind for me. Look, Gordon and Haley left things in a really weird place. Gordon, however, is feeling a lot of compassion for Haley that Haley doesn't know about because he went to Hound Dogs and he saw Vanessa and he knows the significance of Vanessa. So Gordon's dealing with some information here where he wants to diffuse the situation and he wants to relate to his daughter. He wants his daughter to be okay with him. And that's really what's needed here. But Haley's missing a lot of that information right now. So okay, now we're going to see what Boz wanted Cam to do. So Cam walks into City Hall. He didn't tell her what was going to happen at City Hall. So she's probably approaching this address going, oh my God, I'm going to City Hall. What's happening? She gets inside and she sees Diane in a white suit jacket or white pantsuit, pinning a yellow rose to a woman who we're going to find out is her daughter. We see Cam sees Boz in a suit and it instantly clicks what she's there for. And her whole face, she's just like, oh, she says, holy shit, like, this is what I'm here for. Boz sees her, he comes over smiling. He's very calm, very composed. He says, well, we needed a witness. And since she brought her daughter, pointing to Diane, and it's such a touching thing, right? Because we saw in Yerba Buena in season 3, when Cam and Boz go back to Texas, she didn't like being thought of as his daughter. She's like, I don't think of you as my father. And, it was a tense situation for sure. There was a lot of Cam parental stuff happening for her at that moment. She's like, I don't think of you as my father. He's like, well, I think of you as a daughter. And at that point, it was a fight. And here, Look, a lot of stuff has happened since then. And, he says, since she brought her daughter, and Cam just is like, oh, she's just feeling the love right now. She says, why didn't you tell me? He says, well, because we're not making a fuss. She just gestures to the fact that she's in completely casual clothes, looks very out of place here. She's like, yeah, but I would have dressed up. He says, you're perfect. Boss. They give each other this big hug, and then they walk over to Diane and her daughter. Cam says hi. Diane says, thank you for coming. Again, the last time I think we've seen any interaction between Cam and Diane was, Cam being voted out of Mutiny, partially, by Diane. And so, like, I am now led to believe that they've had interaction since then. And if not for any other reason, I think probably if Cam visited Boz. So that's how I'm explaining that in my head. All right. We are now going to see Donna in her office at AGEC. And a couple things here. First of all, I am just so loving the fact that you've all given me like this angle of Donna and Trip, like Trip's kind of into Donna to interpret these scenes through now to see if that checks out for me. Kind of liked having that read going into this scene. Donna is also, like, I've never noticed this part of her office before. So she has the part we've often seen of her desk, the fact that there are no chairs in front of her desk. She's got that sofa on the side, and that's where like the main door is. But apparently there's like this whole extension of her office where she's got this whole like another glass table, and she's got apparently some sort of a wardrobe or like an armoire. And so she's at this beautiful wardrobe, and she closes the door of it, and she looks through, there's sort of a window out into the hallway, and she can see Trip looking to get into her office. And he gestures to her in sort of a celebratory way with this folder that he's holding. She rolls her eyes because it's Trip. And he comes in, and he's going to walk around to where she's standing in this sort of extension part of her office. And he sits in this chair at the glass table that she's at. He says, read it and weep. With joy, he hands her the folder. He says, no, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself because that's my nature, but Rover is crushing the competition, your ex's company included. No disrespect. She's reading through this paper that he gave her. She says, we can call it Comet. How many times has she had to do this where she's like, Comet's just like any other competitor to Rover right now. Nobody buys that. Everybody's on to her. Come on, Donna. Trip says, well, they're getting walloped. Our traffic is phenomenal. It's twice what Comet is seeing. Donna says, how long is it taking people to find what they're looking for? He says, 35 seconds a visit, down from 1 minute 20. Her eyebrows sort of raise a little, like those numbers are good. I'm guessing they've seen some progress in that area as well. He says, users in and out, happy customers, Donna. So they're trying to keep people moving. Donna smiles. She throws the folder onto the table. She says, terrific. I actually don't know now what those numbers look like. And we're going to see that the model that Donna suggests later is perhaps a little bit more the direction that search engines headed in. So I don't know what the goal is if you're trying to keep people moving or if you're trying to keep, people on your site longer. But it's an interesting thing to look at, this, like the beginning of which direction are you trying to go with these platforms. So Trip is going to smile. There's sort of a natural pause here. He stands, he clears his throat, and he says, so I hear that you're taking some well-earned vacation time. Where are you going? Or more importantly, who are you going with? I think he does like her. He just wants to know if, there's somebody else in the picture right about now. Donna has this sort of like, I'm appeasing you by talking to you smile. Just, I'm not going anywhere, just a little local R&R. Trip's like, no, what he says is, good for you, a little me time, eh? But what he's thinking is, I think he is. I think to those who have the read that Trip's into her, this supports it, I think. Donna says, thanks for keeping me in the loop. Trip says, yeah, you take care of yourself. No one else will. Am I right? I'm right. And he leaves. Look, Trip comes across, we're meant to be seeing Trip through Donna's eyes. Donna hates him. She sees she's threatened by him. And so it makes you think like Trip's this entitled jerk. Trip's done nothing wrong. Like in the first meeting or so that they had together when he was named partner, he was like pushing back a little. Well, he was like, just getting up on my skis here. Just wanted to see, is the thing that you're doing what this other company is doing? Like he had a little bit of that pushback initially, but otherwise, for a while now, he seems to be wanting to work with or impress Donna. So I don't know. Poor Trip. Okay, we're going to go to Joe, who is watching footage of the commercial he's been working on his TV in his apartment. He's watching it off the view cam, but on the TV. So we're getting footage like there's a woman on screen saying, "What am I looking for?" Time. Joe smiles. He fast forwards, and is like, and now that I think about that answer, it's pretty relevant to one of the characters being at the end of his time. Joe smiles, though. He fast forwards. We get a man on the screen saying, "Yeah, I get email. I use the computer in the library." Joe fast forwards again. We're going to get a man with hedge clippers. He's like, "You mean that Prodigy thing? What am I looking for?" Cam at this point walks into Joe's apartment. She's back from Boz and Diane's wedding. She says, "Hey," this guy's saying on the screen, he's saying landscaping supplies. Cam's like, "What are you doing home?" Joe pauses the video and he looks at her. He says, "Well, the AC in the office finally went out. Everybody's working from home while they fix it." She says, "Oh," he says, "what are you doing home?" She announces, "Boz got married." Joe is happily surprised. Look, at the last episode, he went to see Boz. They had like a friend conversation. Joe was unloading some information about his relationship with Cam and the fact that they're not on the same page regarding kids, and Boz was encouraging about that. But this came from Boz unloading about where he's at right now with Diane. And at the end of that conversation, as Diane was getting home and pulling into the garage, Joe was like, "If you need a place to stay." And that's where he left things with Boz. So for Joe now to hear Boz and Diane got married, that's really good news for Joe. He's happy for a friend now. So he hears this. Joe's like, "What?" So he stands, they're both walking through the apartment. I think it's worth noting, like Cam didn't come over and hug him or greet him. She says, "Hey," from across the room. And then she walks through the apartment to start gathering things. She goes to gather toilet paper. She goes to fill up a plastic bag full of clothes. And he's following her to be affectionate. She says, "Yeah, they just decided to do it this morning." He says, "Well, I guess they finally worked things out." Kim's like, "They said it was for practical reasons, but I don't know." She's opening the wardrobe to get the clothes. She's smiling. She says, when they were up there saying their vows, looking in each other's eyes, and she's sort of loving the memory of that. He grabs her, he kisses her. He's being really affectionate with her. He's wearing his, also, for Joe, he no longer has the Achilles heel of casual wear, because he's all about casual wear now. He's got the baggy sweatshirt. He smiles. He's like, "Are you getting misty?" She says, "I'm not. I'm just happy for them." He's like, "All right, all right." He's kissing her. He's like, "Stop pressuring me." She sort of shakes her head and escapes playfully. She says, I just hope it works out for them." Joe stops and he turns to look at her. She's like, "Better than it did for our sorry asses." I mean, with other relationships, not with this one. He was walking away for part of that, and he gets to a point where his face is covered in shadow. And so you're like, "Ooh, how's he reacting to this?" And then he gets to the other side and they're still being playful, sort of. And so he's smiling about it. He says, "I get it. I get it. You're not in a rush, are you?" And at this point, and this is not the only time this is going to happen for them, we're going to hear the talking over each other. So Cam is saying, Actually, let's start with what Joe is saying. Joe is saying, I want to show you some of the videos I've been shooting because of public perception of the internet, and he's getting into his work. And she's saying, yeah, I want to get back to work. The new project is starting to hum. No, no, no. Oh, please. Like I lost a whole morning because of Boz and Diane. Alexa's coming and I wouldn't even picked up the phone if it was anybody but Boz. And when Joe hears that, because they've been talking over each other the whole time. When Joe hears that, he pauses and he like turns around to look at her and she's like, for you, I would have picked up for you, of course. Joe turns back with a little smile. Then she comes over and surprises him with a kiss that she initiates. He's like, no, 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 go on, get out of here, get out of my apartment. He pushes her away. She says, okay. She walks out. As she's walking out, she announces, you're out of toilet paper. He says, well, maybe I'll come out there tonight. She says, you want to come out to the Airstream voluntarily? He says, well, I might need some toilet paper. She is excited. She's like, oh, that's fantastic. You can meet everybody. Okay. She leaves and Joe looks so confused. Meet everybody. Who is she talking about? She means her characters, the characters of her game. Let's talk about this scene a little bit. Joe and Cam, I'm thinking about when Gordon first found out they had gotten back together and he did that whole like, you're a train and she's a train and you're on the same track and you're heading in the same direction. You're both carrying dynamite and it's going to explode. I feel like that in this conversation, right? They're talking over each other. They're excited about completely different things. Cam is wiggling her way out of every possible reference to the idea that they could commit to each other long term. Joe clearly wants to. He's like, are you trying to make an honest Lenny out of me? Are you getting misty on me? Okay, like, don't pressure me into marrying you. Like, he's saying these things and he means it. And they have been saying stuff like this to each other for episodes now, like pretty much since 403. Here we are at 407. It's been months. And they're still saying these things to each other that signify completely different things they want, but they're masking it with a playful energy because if they didn't, I think they'd have to deal with the fact that they're saying these things to each other. So they just get playful about it and they smile it off and it's like, oh, it's so cute. But it's a problem. And not only that, like, when you think about scenes that you've ever seen in TV shows or movies where a character goes to another character's place to get their stuff out of their home, that usually signifies a breakup. And here they're in the middle of a relationship and Cam's just coming in and grabbing her stuff and taking it away. And some of his toilet paper. I just worry for these two. And they're so not meeting each other with serious energy because I don't think they're prepared to do that right now. So okay. We are going to get a lovely scene that's going to be echoed later in a much more tragic way. And this is already kind of tragic to begin with. Gordon is in his home alone. He turns on the dishwasher in his kitchen, and then he's going to walk to the counter to see Haley's test with an A on it. And then Gordon starts walking through his home. We're going to see him walk through his home later in a different context. But something that we're going to spot here is that as he's walking through his home, we're going to see morning light sort of flaring in through the windows. If you look back again, we've all been trying not to spoil Gordon's death, but they have been playing with light flares, Gordon looking into light behind Gordon's head. They've been doing it for a long, long time now. And so if you go back and you're looking for when I start talking about it, you're going to find it happening a lot. I think the first time I really noticed it was in season 3. When Ryan leaves Mutiny for the last time and he tells Gordon off on Joe's behalf. And then Gordon actually looks into the light and it like sort of fills the screen for a moment. That was a moment that I really noticed it. I'm trying to think if I really registered it before that, but most of the time we've seen it, it's been sort of like golden hour light coming through the window, or something like what we're seeing here. Gordon is going to walk through the house. He gets to Haley's door. He opens the door and he walks in. And this is the room, the final room he will walk into later when he is dying. In this context, it helps us to have a sense of place with the room that he'll be in later, but also he wants to walk into this room and he wants to learn more about who his daughter is. So I took a moment. I saw what I could observe in the room. We see things like a periodic table poster, or the rocket that she kept from the ones that they shot off in the last episode. A Stars and Planets Club second place ribbon, a Crash Test Dummies signed picture. That's pretty cool. You may remember them from their song, I'm serious. It's a good song. She's part of a computer club. There's something from Hound Dogs. Those are just some of the things I noticed. And then he puts the test on her desk, and then he sees something in the trash and he bends down, and we go past a chessboard. We've seen a couple characters have chessboards. I especially think of Ryan with that. He leans down to reach into the trash. He pulls out a wad of her hair. Pause. This is not how hair looks when you cut it off. What did she do to her hair? Did she like hold it and like tease it upwards like for an hour first and then cut it? No, it looks like a nest. This is not how hair looks when you cut it. Like, especially her hair was like long and smooth, and she probably just like did this and was like cut, it would look long and smooth. Weird. Anyway, so Gordon, the point of this scene is not that her hair looks weird. It's Gordon just looking around, like realizing he doesn't know enough about his daughter. As much as he's learned about her from working with her at Comet and from her interests that she's shared on the Comet website, he didn't know about Vanessa, until he put it together. He saw the bird symbol on one of the rockets, and that symbol was tattooed, like 2 tattoos under Vanessa's collarbones. So Haley's such a good kid, and I think in a lot of ways we've seen how much those two identify with each other, and they seem so close. And yet there's this whole huge element, at least this one huge element of her life that she has not revealed to Gordon or perhaps anybody. And it's big, and it hurts. And like, and maybe this is part of the reason why Haley doesn't seem to have friends at school, and like, just poor Haley, like she's dealing with a lot of stuff that she hasn't been able to share. And Gordon sits in her room just trying to figure out like, who's my daughter, like how he I think wants to be there for her and doesn't know quite how to get there, and he's looking for any information he can find, and he'll never get to use it. And she's never going to get to know that he knew and he loved her, it's just so sad to think about this detail. So he's looking around her room and he's tearing up a bit, and he's really feeling it. So we now are going to go see another cam scene. She's in her Airstream. She's brushing her teeth in her underwear. She's having a full-on conversation with somebody, but who we can't see yet. There's a song playing under this scene, a song with a female singer. What is this? Does anybody know what this song is? It's quite lovely, kind of sad. So Cam is having this whole excited conversation with a person we can't see. She's saying, and then I had to spend hours coaxing Billy out of the corner. And when I finally get her to move, Bing gets a wild hair and starts bouncing all over the walls. Cam's crossing the Airstream to go back to her computer. We still haven't seen anybody. And now she's looking at these characters on the computer. They're calm, they're not moving at all. She's like, well, now look at them, perfect little angels. Hey, come here, look. So we finally see the exterior shot of the Airstream. There's like a tree limb in the foreground. We're in nature. Joe is here. He is sort of hanging mostly out of the Airstream. He's sitting on the threshold of the Airstream, most of him outside of the Airstream. And it feels like that's where they are in their relationship right now. He's like, I thought we were going for a hike. She says, we are. I just want to make one minor tweak to the collision detection. It'll take 2 seconds. Joe is fully distracted by the beauty of the nature around him. He says, it sure is pretty out here. So again, they're going to talk over each other. Cam is fully distracted by her game. She's very focused on her game. She's saying, oh my God, look at this, the characters. She's saying, I mean, Billy is a badass. But then what? Gazebo just instantly retreats unless there's food. So she's like very focused on this game. Meanwhile, Joe is mesmerized by these great outdoors. And he is saying in a very soft voice, sure is pretty out here. We should build a house, something with a nice deck. The camera starts pushing in slowly on his face. It's going to keep doing it. He says, nothing major, just a couple rooms, 2, maybe 3. We should have a fireplace in every room, even the bathroom. He turns to Cam to see if she's listening, and she is not. So then he tries to get her attention. He's like, fire pole, stripper pole, any kind of pole. She's not listening. Okay, all right, fine. This has been lovely. So he throws his coffee, the rest of his coffee, onto the ground. He stands up. He says, I feel like our hiking window is slipping away. So, too bad. He's going to bring his mug into the kitchen. He says, it's been a pleasure to fall asleep and wake up in your workspace. You know, like it's not so cute anymore. There's a bit of truth to that. She holds up her hand to get him to wait. She says, I swear to God, 2 minutes. He comes over to kiss her. He says, I know you believe that when you say it. She says, wait. She like literally holds his face in place so he can't move. And she says, can I take you to dinner tonight? He says, you feeling guilty? She says, yeah, a little. He laughs. She says, please, we'll go into town. We can sleep in the big bed. Like we can sleep at your place. He says, ooh, now you're talking. She calls to him as he leaves. And she says, I'll call you later. Wish me luck. He's walking to his car. He says, luck? What would you need that for? Cam's gonna look back at her characters. She's like, one's chasing another one. She's like, oh my God. I'm thinking, I never myself played The Sims, but I remember babysitting a girl who was obsessed with them. And this kind of reminds me of like an early version of that. Am I right in thinking that? Looks like she's got an idea here that will have some legs in the real world. So, once again, these two talking over each other, 2 completely different things that they're fixated on right now. Cam is so focused on her work. Joe wants to settle down. He wants to build a house with her. He's even willing to build it where she, like on this plot of land that she's got. I don't know. These two just can't seem to talk or don't want to. All right. Donna is at Gordon's front door. He's going to let her in. I guess, this is something they planned, but he's giving her a heads up. She says, how short are we talking? He's like, well, it's pretty short, like shorter than Dorothy Hamill's, but not as short as Mark Hamill's, somewhere mid Hamill. They're walking into the house, into the kitchen. I think it's really interesting that he walks ahead of her, she walks through, and the camera is taking a different route. So there's a point when a wall completely blocks them. Donna says, well, is it Pixie-ish? Is it like Audrey Hepburn or Mia Farrow? Gordon's like, Donna, it's not that kind of haircut. Okay, it's not fashionable. You're not going to like it. I was like, why would she do that? She has such beautiful hair. Gordon says, well, I think maybe she's trying to work some stuff out, make some kind of a statement. He's fixing himself some coffee. Donna says, all 15-year-old girls should just be put on an island until they're ready for civilized society. It's a bold take. That's a lot. Gordon says, I think some girls just struggle more than others. It's interesting in the last two episodes to see these characters who know what the deal is with Haley, and like one of her big like core secrets that she is keeping to herself. It's interesting to see how the grown-ups are handling it as they find out, like Joe not being able to out Haley to Gordon, not wanting to, but just dropping little lines. And Gordon's now starting to do that. I think some girls just struggle more than others. And I was like, oh, come on, Haley's fine. He says, I just wanted to give you a heads up before you saw it. Donna is looking through some of his wine bottles. She says, I appreciate you taking them this week. I really just needed some uninterrupted time. Me time, like the Adorn trip would say. Gordon's listening. He says, how are the meetings going? So Donna has been going to probably AA meetings. Says, I toggle between boredom and horror. Sometimes someone shared a story about narcotic-induced constipation that I'll never be able to unhear. Gordon's like, She says, yeah, I'll just be happy when it's all over. He is listening. He's nodding. I'm thinking that this was not, she's not going to meetings on a voluntary basis. I'm thinking it has something to do with the terms of her bail. Like, I don't know. I'm assuming it has something to do with the DUI. Donna says, and as a lovely humiliation coda, I got kicked off of Rover. Gordon gets a little bit of a smug smile. She's like, shut up. He leans down a bit closer to her. He's like, what happened? She says, oh, just everything. Cam, Boz, Diane, it was a perfect storm of awful. He says, I'm sorry, but I mean, at least we're not direct competitors anymore. She's like, hey. He says, it'll make it a lot easier when Comet kicks Rover's ass. She laughs. She's like, oh yeah, what makes you think that's ever going to happen? He says, well, we're doing pretty well, about to launch a big marketing push. Says, do you know what your user numbers are? He says, well, we get 50,000 hits a day. It gives us an idea. Donna says, Rover's doing twice that. Gordon freezes. Oh my God, that's like a substantial difference. Donna says, the average user finds what they're looking for in 35 seconds. But here's the thing. Where in the past, Donna might have said this with like a real edge to her, like, ha ha ha, we're getting twice your traffic. That's actually not the angle she's taking here. Gordon stands up straight, like, oh my God, our business model isn't going to work. It's a lot, the number she just said. He says, that's impressive. Donna says, yeah, it is, but it's also what makes it vulnerable. Gordon says, what do you mean? And Donna says, I'm not convinced the fight gets won by the site that keeps traffic moving. I think it might go to the one that keeps users around. What a generous moment for her that she's sharing this information with Gordon. It's like, look, let's be doing two different things. Like, we feel like we're doing great things by having these numbers. Trips are really excited about them, but I don't know. I don't know if that's really what the measure of success looks like here. And Comet and Rover have always had different models. So I think it doesn't necessarily hurt Rover to have Comet going down this different path and trying these different things. It's awfully generous for Donna to be taking this approach. And I think Gordon was very generous with her at the end of the last episode when he picked her up from the station. So now Gordon's got this idea. We're gonna see a meeting between him and Joe in the Comet conference room, and Joe is watching Gordon sort of pace around, energized. Gordon's like, look, it makes so much sense. Why are we working so hard to become the fastest site when we could become the stickiest? Interesting to use that word. I feel like that's a word that we've really landed on now. And he's using it then. If we can keep users hanging around, then we can start locking in advertisers. Joe's like, but the whole point is to deliver them to other sites. Gordon says, no, we could still do that, but it could also be a destination in itself. Look, according to Donna, we're not even close. Oops, probably shouldn't have done that. Joe's like, whoa, Donna? Gordon says, yeah. Joe's like, what does she have to do with anything? Or there's nothing. She stopped by this morning and we got to, Joe says, no, 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 we're not taking business advice from Donna. Been there, done that, not doing it again. Gordon's like, who cares where it comes from if it's a good idea? Joe says, she's our direct competition. Why would we listen to what she has to say? Gordon says, because she's a really well-informed player in the field. Joe just decides, he's like, we're not going to be derailed by Donna. We're going to move forward with this marketing plan. And I'm really excited about what Gordon says. What's the point in coming up with a marketing plan when we're going to end up redesigning the whole site? Joe says, because we're not going to redesign the whole site. Katie opens the door at this point. She leans in. She's wearing a full-on coat. So I guess whoever was trying to fix the air conditioning, it didn't work. She's like, hey, I'm really sorry to interrupt, but we're freezing out there. Like, I don't know what the guy did yesterday, but I think he's trying to cryogenically preserve us. So now Gordon and Joe are going to go into the main room. They're continuing their conversation. So we're taking this, we're sort of moving in space with this conversation. We see people putting on extra layers in the office because it's so cold. Gordon's working on a control panel. Joe is standing there listening. Gordon, we're seeing that. We first see them from inside a meeting room looking out through the blinds. And Gordon says the average visit to Rover takes 30 seconds, okay? Whereas the average visit to us takes well over a minute. Joe says, I don't trust the data. Gordon's like, you're being ridiculous. Joe leans in very close to Gordon. He learned from the last time when he made his comment about screwing the chief ontologist. He's not going to do that again. He leans in this time and whispers to Gordon, or just says it in a low voice. He says, are you sleeping with her again? Gordon's working on the panel. He's like, am I sleeping with my ex-wife? Yeah, we're going at it like rabbits. He looks in Katie's direction. He's like, and Katie, she's cool with it. Katie's looking at them skeptically, freezing, drinking a warm drink, bundled up at her desk. Joe whispers, he's like, we've been spending a lot of time together. He's shaking his head. He's like, much more than usual. He does not approve. Gordon, stay away from Donna. Gordon says, she's the mother of my children. We see each other. I shouldn't even have told you the idea came from her. Then you would have thought it was a great idea. Joe does his pointing gesture. We saw him do it a bunch at the beginning of this season. He's like, but it did come from her, and I'm not taking business advice from someone whose goal it is to dance on the carcass of my company. Gordon's like, okay, come on. She's not that bad. Besides, she's not even, look, she's in a different place now. He's trying not to out her with the whole drinking situation. He says she has other things to worry about. Besides, her daughter works here, for Christ's sake. Joe sort of raises his hands to dispute, and Gordon's like, you really think she's going to go out of her way to try and destroy a company that her daughter works at? Joe says, but her daughter doesn't work here anymore. Now is the perfect time for her to strike. And Joe is walking away for this now. Gordon says, she's not a ninja, Joe. I love that. Gordon does something else on the control panel and all the lights go out and everybody groans. And Katie's like, oh my God. What? Gordon's like, I got it. Okay, so everybody's going to get another work from home day. So there's some more tension. Look, Donna and Joe have often seen right through each other. They've never been close. They've really all the way back from when Joe had the reporter come into Cardiff Electric and he created a situation where it looked like Cam had lost all of her work. And he actually had copied it and was prepared to save the day. And Donna comes in and she saves the day. And Joe's really threatened. And he's trying to get her out of the office. Like all the way back from that, these two have always been people who have been willing to go to great lengths to make their thing happen. I think he's been sort of more manipulative maybe in some really manufactured ways, but she has certainly had some designs in season 4 in her angry state. So they don't trust each other. And Gordon's always been sort of the glue that kept them together, I think. All right, so now we're going to see Donna. She's carrying a huge blue box across Diane's front lawn. God, Diane's house is so huge. It's wow. The doorbell rings, and then we're going to see from the inside, Diane goes to the door to open it. Diane's like, oh my, she sees this box. Donna smiles. She's like, I'm sorry to barge in. It's just Gordon told me the news, and Diane says, please come in. She lets Donna in. We weren't trying to keep it from anyone. It just all happened so quickly. It's a little awkward between the two of them. Donna jokes. She's like, are you pregnant? Diane laughs. She takes the gift. She says, honey, Donna's here. She brought something massive from Tiffany's. Diane's going to put the box down on the chair. Boz is going to come in. And Boz, she's like, oh, hey. Oh, he sees the box. He's like, what? I didn't know Tiffany's had made a box that big. Donna's going to smile. She says, look at you all happy and healthy. So I feel like, whereas I think Cam visited Boz and cleared the air with him and maybe with Diane, I don't know if Donna visited Boz. This feels a bit to me like this is the first time she's seeing definitely Diane since like the fight that they had, where Diane was like, you can't work on this rover project anymore. So Donna's smiling. She says, look at you all happy and healthy. Boz is going to come over. He's going to give her a kiss on the cheek. She gets this little flash of awkwardness and discomfort on her face. He's like, good to see you. Yeah, feeling good. Ready for another dinner. Different restaurant, though. Diane just sort of breathes in, like, we do not speak of this moment. Diane and Boz are sort of standing next to each other in solidarity. Says, I just wanted to say congratulations. I'm so happy for you. Diane says, well, we really only did it for tax reasons. Boz is like, yeah, and on account of me almost dying. True. That's the more accurate thing, I think, here. Donna says, oh, I don't know. You pledged your troths. I feel like that's romantic. You know, Donna being happy for people who got married feels a little bit like the sheen came off of that after Tom and Cam, you know, like I do think she's genuine here, but yeah, like I'm so happy for you that you're getting married, knife in back. It's you know, we've seen this before. Boz is like, well, that's what people keep telling us. Boz and Diane look at each other, they giggle a little bit, they're cute. Diane's like, sweetheart, can I have a minute with Donna? If you have time, Donna. And Donna's like, yeah. Boz says, yeah, sure. He picks up the box. Geez, this thing's heavier than hell. Donna's like, oh, it's just a punch bowl. He's like, oh, a punch bowl. Oh, sweetheart, where do we keep our punch bowls? Diana says, put it in the pantry. I'll take care of it. Boz says, okay. Donna says what's really happening here. She says, or you could put it right in the back of Diane's car so she can exchange it for a nice piece of jewelry. He says, well, what the hell do I get? Donna says, you get Diane. True. You're Boz. What a find. What a catch. That is your prize. Diane's the best. Okay. As far as I'm concerned. And I'll die on that hill. All right. Boz's like, fair enough. So Diane walks ahead of Donna into the living room. They're standing at first. We see them from the dining room, and it's a shot like this that makes me feel like this is just completely like they have not seen each other. Diane says, Donna, first of all, I owe you an apology. I was rough about Rover. So yeah, really feels like I don't even think Donna's seen Boz since his heart attack. Donna waves all this away. She's like, no apology necessary. It was a complex situation. They sit down now. Okay, enough said with the apologies. It's out there. It's done. I like that it could just be sort of done like that with them. We're in the room with them now. Donna says, water under the bridge. Diane says, I wanted to let you know that I'm getting ready to step back as managing partner. Donna's surprised at this. She says, really? Diane says, well, we got the message loud and clear about not living forever. And if I want to spend time with my new husband, managing partner is not a part-time job. Donna doesn't really love the news. She's on kind of a rough footing at the company, and Diane's been her advocate. And so Diane's leaving now. She says, when were you thinking about doing this? Diane says, soonish. Donna's face kind of falls. Like, this has been an important person for her. It's I don't know. Diane's been a protector in her way, even though she showed some tough love in the last episode. Diane says, I wanted to let you know that if you still want the job, I'll back you. Donna's surprised at this because they just came off of a fight. She's like, well, okay then. Of course I do. Dan says, good. I mean, I can't just anoint you. Donna gets that. Dan says, but I do have a pretty jumbo-sized vote. Donna laughs. She just wasn't expecting any of this. But she's humble in that she says, thank you. Diane says, should we celebrate champagne, gin? Donna says, just water would be great. Diane goes to get it. She says, okay. So, we are going to see Donna drink wine later in this episode. So it's not that she's teetotaling at this point, but this is, it's a rarity for Donna and Diane to drink something other than wine with each other, or, something, a stronger drink. So this is Donna trying to make some different choices. When I think about how the recaps have gone for this podcast for all of the season 4 episodes, I really was struck by how many times we see Donna with wine in her hand, or any sort of drink in her hand, or a martini or something like that. It's a lot. I hadn't clocked before this how much she was drinking, and it was a lot. So yeah, this is a new choice. All right, Cam and Alexa. Cam's going to open the Airstream door. She's going to bring Alexa inside. She's like, sorry, I know it's a little insane in here, but Alexa gets inside this tight space that we know Alexa's going to hate. She's like, no, it's perfect. I didn't know what to expect when I heard Trailer in the Woods. She stands looking around as Cam is sort of seated at her computer, getting things set up. Alexa's like, I feel like I just walked into your brain. Cam says, oh no, my brain isn't as tidy as this. There's just sketches and papers like taped up all over the Airstream. Cam says, do you want to see? So Cam slides over, Alexa slides in behind the computer. And Cam's saying, okay, so it's all still pretty basic, but what I've been trying to do is create bots with distinct personalities and whose choices change depending on the circumstances they're in. Alexa gets it. She's like self-learning AI. Cam says, exactly. So it's not just the player acting upon the game, it's the game acting upon itself. And then the player has to try and catch up. Alexa nods. She gets it. Say less. I've been there. She's seen a million things like this, I guess. Cam's smiling, though. She's really excited. She's connected with these characters. She says, so this is Bang and Billy, and this is Gazebo. She says, I have a bunch, but these are the main 3. Alexa giggles, but she does look a little disappointed. It feels like this is a thing. This is a pitch she's heard before. Kim says, what I'm really trying to do is create a world in which actions have consequences, I mean, Cam's been living in that world. See Tom, see Donna, see everything that happened with, it's just, she's creating the world she's living in pretty much, but one that she has a little bit more control over the creation of it right now. So Alexa looks kind of bored. Her eyes are starting to wander around the trailer. She's like, Cam, we're now going to see them from outside the Airstream window, and Alexa is just starting to shift in her seat now. Cam's like, I was really trying to do that with Pilgrim too, but I guess that game was too solitary or hard or whatever. Now we're back in the Airstream with them. That's feedback that Alexa gave her. Kim says, but here I feel like I'm creating characters that have the ability to accrue memory and develop a personal narrative and change over time. Kim's really excited. She's like, it's all just feeling really immersive and complete. You know, I think again, I think all of this stuff might be things that Cam wants for herself, accruing this memory, developing a personal narrative, and changing over time. Like, what are the things about her that she's aiming to change? Alexa nods and does not seem excited at all. She's like, really great. Cam smiles. Alexa says, I mean, I was expecting great, so not surprised. Cam says, so do you want to see some more in progress work? Alexa hesitates. She's like, nope. How about we go for a little hike? Talk more big picture. It's just so gorgeous out there. Cam's a little self-conscious about this response. She's like, oh, okay, so this wasn't what you were looking for. Alexa says, no, it's just sometimes I think the ideas get bigger when the space around you does. Like, ooh, Cam, you're thinking too small. Cam's a bit off kilter. She's like, yeah, I've been trying to get out for a hike all day. Let's just get out there. So they both leave the Airstream. Cam leaves the door wide open. You know, I'm originally from New York. I can't even imagine just leaving the door of your home wide open. But I guess that's where she's living. You know, I think with Alexa, I wonder, because it seems like Alexa has big conversations with people. She connects people. We're going to see later that she's going to try to connect Cam with somebody who's in this arena. I wonder to what extent Alexa's meetings are idea meetings and how much of them turn into actual products or games or whatever. You know, like, is it all talking with visionaries and things that are actually getting done, or no? Because Cam's creating something right now. So I do wonder what kind of people Alexa's associating with, if it's visionaries who can act or if it's just visionaries. Because she's heard big ideas before. She's not impressed by Cam's ideas, but Cam's also executing on it. So I don't know. Alexa is looking for something that wows her. Alexa came into this being like, you know, you do what you want to do. I'm not going to impose anything on you, but we can see, like, I do wonder if that is what this relationship is really going to look like, because I think Alexa has some ideas that are very specific and she's pushing Cam towards them. So, okay. We are going to see some more of Joe and Gordon. They're in the dark at Comet because the lights went out. Joe is holding a flashlight, pointing it. He's sitting down. He's pointing it towards a box, a panel, you know, a control box that Gordon's working on. Gordon's going to remove the cover panel so he can get in there. And for a moment, we are going to see, when we see the shots directly into Gordon's face, we can see this light, this flashlight shining behind him again. I'm sure this is intentional. But we've got to get the lights flaring around Gordon. Here's another way to do it. But this time Joe is holding it physically close to Gordon. Joe says, we can call a guy. Gordon says, I already called a guy. He made it worse. Joe says, so did you. True. Ouch. Gordon turns to look at him. He's lit by Joe's flashlight now. Gordon says, look, it's a bad breaker. I can fix that. Joe says, it's more than a bad breaker. Katie walks in behind Joe. She's like, you sure you don't want to call a guy? So again, remember the title of this episode is Who Needs a Guy? So if these two characters now have both said, we can call a guy. Like, Gordon, you can't do this. We can call a guy. All right. Gordon says, you guys, this is not rocket science. Right, rocket science. Katie's like, okay. She comes up to Gordon. She's going to say, thanks for the afternoon off. He's like, well, I didn't give you the afternoon off. You're supposed to be working from home. She says, oh, what did I say? And he laughs. They're cute. She says, all right, I'll see you tonight. Can I bring anything? He says, nope, got that all covered. He's probably going to cook for her. Katie says, okay, you're a take charge mama jamma. He says, He gives her a kiss. She says, try not to blow anything up. She high fives Joe on the way out. He says, I'll try. I love Katie and Gordon together. I do. The episodes that we've had with Katie so far, you've heard me say it, but I think that they're the right people for each other. At this point in their lives, this is exactly the pairing that they need to be in. Um, I think they both seem to have a good sense of perspective, a good sense of humor, um, they communicate pretty well. We've seen them start to have some big conversations and take each other seriously. And we're also seeing Gordon has learned some things from how he was with Donna and the things that didn't get said with Donna, and he's fixing that from the beginning with Katie. I just like them. And Katie has a good relationship with Joe. Yeah, I like Katie. So as Katie's leaving, Joe asks, Katie hasn't even really totally left yet. He's like, Cam said Donna was looking pretty rough when she came by the Airstream last week. Is something going on with her? Cam said she didn't seem like herself. Gordon says, why is Cam gossiping about Donna? Joe says she was concerned. Gordon's still working on the box. He's not responding. He's focused on what he's working on. Joe's like, look, I just don't trust the woman. I know she's your family. I'm not supposed to have an opinion about her, but I don't trust her. Gordon changes the subject. He says, Haley cut her hair off, okay? Joe just stops. If you're gonna try to change the subject, this is an effective way to do it with Joe. Like he says, she cut her hair off short, like a boy. Joe stops shining the light. He turns off the flashlight. Gordon says, Donna came over this morning to talk about it, except Joe, he just sort of inhales. Joe puts the flashlight on the table. He crosses his arms like, this is okay. So that's what you know about Donna, but like, let's talk about Haley. Joe is reassuring here. He says, well, short hair doesn't mean anything. Gordon's like, well, apparently I shouldn't have barked at you the other day, but it's really tough hearing something about your kid that you don't know about. Joe considers that and he accepts that. And he says very quietly and very gently, because this is delicate. He says, can I make one suggestion? Gordon's still working on the box, but he's listening. Joe says, it's really important for Haley not to feel isolated right now. This place is such a great fit for her. I wish you'd let her come back. I love how neither of them have outed her at all, but they both know exactly what the other one is referring to here. Gordon admits, I want her to come back, but she seems pretty intent on hating me right now. Gordon turns around. He looks with Joe with like a request in his eyes. He says, she trusts you, though. Joe holds Gordon's gaze. Gordon says, I mean, she took you to that restaurant, didn't she? Joe nods. He smiles. I think Joe is so honored to be trusted that way. He wants to be there for Haley, and Gordon is giving him and trusting him with a really meaningful way to do that. And I think he takes that very seriously. He's been the cool uncle for Joni and Haley for a while now. He's gotten a lot closer to those kids, but I think he really identifies in a lot of ways with Haley. And he gets to do something for her that he probably wishes, like when he thinks about how he wishes the adults in his life would have handled him as a kid, he gets to do that stuff now for Haley. And Gordon's empowering him to do that. And by the end of this episode, when we see that Gordon will pass away, it's actually really important that Gordon gave that blessing to Joe to be there for Haley in that way. Gordon's going to flip a switch. The lights are going to turn on. He fixed that part anyway. Yay. All right. So we're going to go to Gordon's house. The phone, but this is really an extension of the last scene. So the phone rings. Haley goes to it. Haley says, Clark residence. We hear Joe's voice. Haley, Joe McMillan. Haley's like, oh, my dad's not here today. We're going to see Joe. He says, actually, I'm calling to speak to you. We see her. Oh, We hear Joe's voice as we look at her. He says, I hear you're not interested in coming back to comment, and that really bums me out. We see Haley smiling just a little bit. She says, it bums me out too. Joe very assertively says, so come back. Haley says, I don't think that's a good idea. Joe says, of course it is. We need you. So we're going back and forth between seeing them as they're speaking. Now the camera is so interesting. The camera here was sort of shooting sort of straight on to Haley, and now it's going to go sort of up and over and shoot her from like the front over her head, almost completely over her head, but still sort of angled down. So I don't know, this is really interesting, like protective thing that the camera is doing. Because I don't know, Joe's voice says, what? She says, I just don't think I should be working for my dad or with him or whatever the arrangement was. We see Joe, the camera starts mid-body for Joe. Like we're seeing a bunch of him. And then it's going to be pulling back as he's talking. He says, look, nobody knows better than me how impossible working with your father is. He's moody. The camera is pulling back, and now we see Gordon standing next to him, which makes this so great. He's moody, impatient, ungrateful. Gordon's like, he says, and the know-it-all problem is legendary. Gordon waves him away. We see Haley now smiling. She's like, he's standing right there, isn't he? Joe says, would I be saying all this if he were standing right here? Haley laughs. She's like, yeah. Joe says, okay, so you answered your own question. He's got her. He's turned on the charisma. He's being the cool uncle. He's got her. So she's laughing. He says, you're part of this place and we need you. Pause. So important that he said that. If you remember when Gordon, right before the milkshake was thrown in the previous episode, where Gordon was like, no, like if your grades are suffering, you can't work here until the grades are not suffering anymore. And she's like, no, people need me here. And he's like, I'm sure we can manage. And I was critical of, like, Gordon doesn't make to me a lot of missteps in season 4. Like, I think he's a guy who understands. He has perspective. His health has probably gotten him to this place. He's a better communicator, but that thing that he said to Haley when he was like, I'm sure they can manage without you. Like, that's not what anybody wants to hear. Like she needs to know she's important. Like, it's not about putting all the focus on her. It's like, to say she's not necessary doesn't feel like the right message for her in that moment. And for Joe to say, you're part of this place and we need you. Joe totally gets it, like he gets what Haley needs to hear. Haley says, did my dad hear that? Good question. Joe says, yes, he did, and he knows it's true. We look at Gordon's face. He needs this to work. He wants to patch things up with Haley. Then we see Haley. She says, tell him I'll see him tonight. Joe says, I'm going to take that as a yes and inform the pot stickers. Haley says, we'll see. She hangs up the phone and she smiles a little. He got her. Joe hangs up and Gordon's smiling a little bit. He got her. Joe says, she'll see you tonight. Gordon stands. He needs more information. He's like, well, what did she say that in a nice way or like a threatening way? Just as nice. Now, Gordon's overheating, so fixing the lights wasn't actually fixing the AC problem. He puts his hands in front of the vent. He's like, now the air's not coming out at all. Joe says, it's fine. Gordon says, it's not fine, Joe. Gordon leaves very annoyed, but Joe's smiling. Like, in the grand scheme of things, this patch up with Haley is so much more important than anything else. It's the best. It's hitting me what we're getting to. Okay, so First, we're going to get to Alexa and Cam walking in the woods. Alexa, they're in this big space, to go from this tight quarters of an Airstream to this big space outdoors just makes the whole thing feel different as a viewer. Alexa says, don't get me wrong, the bot technology is impressive, but Blizzard is already doing something similar. Cam frowns a bit at the word Blizzard. She's like, what? And Alexa says, and so is Origin. Cam says, and I can totally compete in that arena. Alexa says, but what about an entirely different arena? What if your software was used on the surface of Mars or in the human bloodstream? What if Gazebo could be used to defend the immune system? Cam folds her arms. Alexa's smoking. We don't see a ton of characters doing that here. Alexa's like, just as well as I do that the technology you're working on isn't just going to live inside a game. Cam says, yeah, and that's a very easy thing to say, but I've been working on games. Alexa's like, no. Again, we're going to do a talking over each other thing. Cam's saying, I've been working on games for a long time. Alexa's like, I don't mean to pretend that I know what it's all going to look like. We see a wide shot of them walking. And Alexa says, can I ask you a personal question? Cam says, yes. Alexa says, what's the deal with you and Donna Emerson? Cam doesn't really even want to respond to that. Alexa's like, things seem pretty prickly at Misk. I know you two worked on Mutiny. Cam says, we did. Alexa smiles and looks back at Cam. She's been walking ahead of Cam this entire time. She says, so what happened? Cam says, we didn't share the same vision for our company. Alexa says, did she try to push you out of your comfort zone? Alexa looks back. She laughs a little bit like, gotcha. Cam very awkwardly is like, Alexa says, hey, don't worry. You're the visionary. I'm just here to make sure you have everything you need. And they're going to keep walking. I think Alexa maybe doesn't have the right person, because Cam is so smart and very capable and has big ideas. But Cam likes to do games. Like we've seen what Cam does in her spare time. And it's always community building and games. And the stuff that Alexa's talking about is not stuff that I would think Cam is interested in, because she's never expressed an interest in this stuff. So, yes, Alexa has found somebody who has the know-how to do these things, but not necessarily the fascination with the types of things she's talking about. So it might not be the right placement, the right team up. She's like, no, you can do whatever you want. I'll give you whatever latitude you need to do whatever you want. Cam's like, how about a game? She's like, but anything, think of anything. She's like, but a game. I don't, from what I'm seeing from these two, I don't think that they're the correct match. I could be wrong. Maybe if Cam has expressed an interest in anything in this vicinity in the past, let me know what I'm not remembering right now. But Alexa is operating in a different space and is looking for an application of these ideas that is, I think, more specific than she thinks it is, and not Cam's wheelhouse or passion. So Alexa talking more is sort of off-putting to Cam, I think, in this situation. Okay, we are now going to go to my favorite detail of the entire show. And I don't know if I'm saying it's not my favorite scene of the entire show, but just the very idea of what happens next touches me so much. Donna is playing Pilgrim at home. She's drinking wine. We've seen her playing Pilgrim before. She's really far into the game now. We're going to hear the ethereal sounds that we've heard of this game. The Pilgrim has a path in front of it. There seems to be civilization on the other side of this path. Unfortunately, the whole path explodes. Donna rolls her eyes like, oh my God, another thing exploding or going away. She clicks, and then the Pilgrim jumps off of the edge of the cliff and sort of dives, falls, flies down, and is flying towards a light. in the context of this episode, maybe that makes you think a little of Gordon. Um, Donna's really interested by this, though. Wow, like look at what this pilgrim is doing. So Pilgrim lands in a snowy woods setting, and there's a cabin in front of Pilgrim with the light on, a little bit of a walk away. Pilgrim starts walking towards it as Donna watches, and an adult, a bigger, taller character, comes out of this structure. And we see Pilgrim and this taller figure walking towards each other. Then we see them in profile, from the side, walking towards each other. And Donna's liking this. She's fascinated by this. The taller character looks a little bit like Pilgrim, but is dressed all in red. I'm going to say it's a mom. Definitely seems to be a parent. The taller figure kneels down and opens up its arms. The pilgrim walks into them and they embrace each other. And the pilgrim is sort of wrapped into a hug. The way we've seen, I think a lot about the way Cam went in for hugs with Tom in season 2. There was really she would have her arms like down and he would just wrap her up in a hug, like a protective hug. And she seemed like very much like she just needed to lean into him. And we see Pilgrim kind of receiving this hug from this taller figure. Donna watches this and her heart just grows 3 sizes. Her whole face just melts watching this. It's just compassion. She's like, oh my God. It's so beautiful to her. Donna watches, she smiles, and the credits start to roll. Creator and executive producer Cam Howe and Donna. We see Donna from it's shot from behind, like sort of the over her shoulder, but close up on the side of her face as she's smiling. Creative and executive producer Cam Howe and producer Jeff Freilich. Hey, remember when I interviewed Jeff Freilich? That's Jeff Freilich. Donna's smiling. Look, I love that Cam created a game that only Donna can win. We've seen many people try to play this game. We've seen many people stop, give up, fail. We've seen people talk about how hard it is. Donna is the only person we know of who has played this game to completion. And she was so emotionally touched by the ending of this game. And I don't know. To me, there's something in that there's a bond between Donna and Cam that's like just on a deeper level. And I think for this to be the end of this game, like Cam, I see the taller figure as a woman, maybe because of the red color of the clothing. And I just think we've never heard good things about Cam's relationship with her mom. And like to have this pilgrim be wrapped up in a hug by, I think, a mom-like character, and to know that Donna, one of the major things that we can say about that character is that she is a mom. She was a mom to kids she birthed. She was a mom at Mutiny. She, I think the significance of that as well. There's this thing between Donna and Cam that just by playing this game and seeing it through, Donna already understands Cam in a way that nobody else can. And Cam has this whole game connected to a mom hugging her. It's just, this show. Okay, so all right, we're now going to see the continued efforts of Gordon and Joe to fix things up at Comet. I think they're outside the building now. Gordon is working on another panel somewhere, fixing another thing, the AC. Joe says, well, the land grab is over. I'll give you that. Gordon says, well, this is a great way of turning a weakness into a strength. Joe's like, in my interviews, I'm finding that people are mostly just scared of the web. They're afraid they're going to get lost in it. it goes to show how important it is to have something to help you search your way through it, navigate it. Gord's like, yeah, I know. That's why we'll give them a shelter. I mean, the end game doesn't have to be to get wrapped up in some software package. It can be to make Comet a home on the internet. Joe says, what if we took an aggregate of all the top searches? Like when Kurt Cobain died, we were flooded with searches. How amazing would it have been if we had a little write-up about it at the top of the page? Gordon says, yeah, that would have been great. Just pause there for a second. You know, we've been exploring the timing of season 4, which has been an incredibly frustrating process for those of us who have been deep diving into details from 93, 94, and trying to figure out like where different episodes were falling in the timeline, especially the first episode of season 4. But Joe is referring to Kurt Cobain dying as a past event, and that happened in April 1994. So we are somewhere in late April 1994 or after. Joe says it makes possible a truly symbiotic relationship between user and content. People will be interested in the site because the site is interested in them. Gordon says, yes, exactly. That was what I've been getting excited about. Joe's like, we can have entertainment, news. Gordon's like, sports. Joe says, sports. Neither of them are into sports. This is the second time we've seen him do this. Joe's like, the stock market. Like, yeah, sure, we would deliver people to other sites, but they'd always come back to us. Gordon's like, yes. See, this is what it looks like when people are on the same page in terms of where they want to go and what their interests are with their ideas. Very much the opposite of what we saw with Cam and Alexa. And not only that, what Joe is saying, people will be interested in the site because the site will be interested in them, is not so far off from what Cam was saying to Alexa. Like, the user is informing the characters, but the characters are then informing the user, and that's all part of playing the game. So I think they're both actually, like, Joe and Cam have these ideas professionally that are quite aligned, and we've seen that in the past. Cam and Alexa, way off. Gordon and Joe, certainly very close to each other in terms of their visions. It's fun to see what a good partnership, at like a good blend of a partnership might look like. So they're having this idea talk. Joe says, okay, how much longer is this going to take? He means like the thing Gordon's trying to fix, the AC. Gordon says, just 2 more seconds. Joe's like, you and Cam, I swear to God, no sense of time. Because Cam had said earlier, like, just 2 minutes, 2 seconds. Gordon flips the lever. He actually did mean 2 seconds. The machine starts whirring and it's working. Thank goodness. He's like, see, who needs a guy, huh? He slaps the thing proudly. He says, who needs a guy? And there, my friends, is the title of this episode, because both Joe and Katie were like, you sure you don't want to get a guy to do this? And Gordon's like, who needs a guy? He's like, I can do it myself. And pretty soon, when Gordon passes away, they're always going to need a guy. Okay. I can feel this part of the episode coming up. Okay. They go back into the office. The phone is ringing. Joe goes to answer it. He says, Joe McMillan. Cam's voice says, Cameron Howe. Joe says, where are you taking me to dinner tonight? We see her sitting where he used to be sitting in the Airstream, right on the threshold. And she stands up. She says, about that, Alexa invited me out to dinner and I kind of said yes. Joe's like, oh, okay. She says, I'm really sorry. I know I said I'd take you out, but Joe says, it's okay. I got started with something, with Gordon on something, and I'm happy to stick with it. Kim's glad. She's like, really? Okay. Because she wanted me to meet this guy who's working in human computer interaction at Stanford. And then before I knew it, she invited us both to dinner. Joe says, well, it sounds like things went well. She says, well, actually, no. She was a little underwhelmed by what I showed her. Joe's voice is like, what? Kim says, yeah, I think she knew the programming was good, but she said I was thinking a little small. Joe smiles. He says, wow, when was the last time you heard that? Kim admits, she says, I don't know. It's been a while. He says, have fun tonight. We hear her voice. She says, thank you. You're great. We see her face. She says, for the record, I have thought about building a place out here. Okay. So they hear each other, but it's on long time delay. Joe nods. He doesn't even address it. He's pulling the phone from his ear. We hear Cam say goodbye before, like, as he's hanging up the phone. I just feel like there's such a disconnection in the way that conversation ended. Joe stands. He walks up to the conference room. Gordon is looking at the whiteboard when Joe walks in. Gordon wrote the word redesign on the whiteboard. Joe comes in. He says, I think relaunch would be better. So they've sort of gotten to a place where they are both now in agreement that they want to make it the stickiest site and a redesign will be necessary. But Joe's going to just sort of like pick at this. And he's like, relaunch is the word. Gordon says, oh, that's a substantive change. As in, that's not a substantive change. He says, saved the whole project. Joe says, well, launch subsumes design. Gordon's like, says who? Joe says, you can't relaunch something without redesigning it. Gordon says, of course you can. Joe says, well, okay, you can, but you wouldn't. Joe sits and smiles. He's looking at Gordon. Just one more little fight. Gordon inhales, clears his throat, but I like how it turns into a hum. It's a fun choice from Scoot McNairy. He's like, it's like awkward, but I'm letting it go. He turns back to the whiteboard. He erases the word design. He writes the word launch. He looks back at Joe. He's like, happy? Joe says, yes. We're going to see them from outside that interior window from the main part of the office. Gordon says, all right. He looks at his sleeve. He says, oh, geez, where did I get so dirty? So when you insert a line like that in here, we have seen this season, there have been a number of times Gordon mixes up words. He can't pronounce words. They're subtle moments, but they've added up for me, and they really feel like they're signaling mental decline, like brain decline from his illness. For him to say, oh, geez, where did I get so dirty? It was when you were outside working on the panel. Like, that was like 30 minutes ago, like to me, that's another signal. And then as he's looking at his sleeve, he looks at his watch and he says, where did the time go? I got to meet Katie in an hour for dinner. Maybe we should get into this tomorrow. Joe's like, oh, okay. Not a problem. So now he's being ditched by everybody. Joe's just taking it on the chin once again. Gordon says, well, I mean, what's the point in launching? He gestures to the word on the board, into something, when I got to get out of here in 15. Joe's like, of course. Gordon points to this word on the board, though, and he says, hey, great work today. He smiles and he flips the whiteboard marker onto the table. Joe's like, where are you taking her tonight? Gordon says, oh, nowhere. The girls are going to the movies. We're going to stay home. Joe says, nice. And he nods toward the board, and Gordon looks at it. He says, it's a good idea. Gordon says, yeah, I know it is. They're on the same page. I also think it's a fun echo back to the Trip and Donna scene earlier, where he's like, where are you going? Who are you going with? And she's like, going nowhere, just having some me time. And so it's sort of the same thing, but with like a definitely different vibe to it. Apparently now that I'm looking for the stuff with Trip, it's everywhere. So yeah, Gordon's gonna smile. He knocks on the door. He leaves. Joe smiles back at him. And that's the last interaction we're ever gonna see between Gordon and Joe. The very idea that their last conversation was like a semi, like, needling at each other, but actually totally on the same page, totally cohesive as a partnership. What a distance they've come from the pilot. For the last word that Gordon wrote, redesign, relaunch, and for that to be almost like a one-word message left for Joe. I just, Yeah. We'll get to this. I'll put a finer point on that later. These two are so close. They're not just good friends. I feel like they're almost like brothers at this point. Joe really feels like a cool uncle to Gordon's kids. Um, they just have a total acceptance of each other. It's so beautiful. Okay, we're gonna see. This is where things really start ramping up, and this part is really critical in terms of the pacing of this episode and like how things unfold. Donna's outside of her house. She's also into casual wear. She's walking out, she's throwing out trash in the bin out front when Joe pulls up. He gets out of his car and it's getting dark. Joe says, Donna's, what is Joe doing? And I'm like, Joe, is something wrong? Joe says, no. He's walking towards her briskly, though. He needs to address something with her, and this is going to be a conflict. And he's like, everything's fine. Everything's great. She's folding her arms, and she's not happy to see Joe. He just says, I was hoping you could give some clarity on something. She's like, well, I don't have a lot of clarity to spare, but what's on your mind? Joe says, why would you give us potentially useful market research? She says, I'm sorry, what? Joe says, this morning you saw Gordon. He came back, hopped up on some information that you gave him, user numbers, length of visits. Why would you share that with us? I was like, well, why wouldn't I? He says, because you're our direct competition. Donna says, okay, well, first of all, I'm not on Rover anymore, so I'm not your competition. And secondly, Joe's like, what are you talking about? You just came over to get Cameron to sign away the algorithm. I was like, what can I tell you, Joe? Shit changes fast. She's walking away from him towards the house and he's following her. She does not want to be talking to Joe. She never really did. And Joe has been gathering all this information from Cam, from Gordon, and it's not adding up with what she's saying right now. Joe's like, if you're off the project, how did you get those numbers? Are they even real? Donna laughs. She's insulted. She's like, wow. The old Joe McMillan, I mean, just volcanic. What do you think? I would have time to just sit around and what, plot against you? I do think that she could do that because we saw her doing that earlier this season. That's how Rover started, and we went from being a medical indexing company to a competitor for Comet. Anyway, Joe says, wouldn't be the first time. She says she's so angry. She says, I promise you I don't give a shit about your company. The only reason I ever cared a little bit was because my daughter worked there, and now that's not even true. So really, I just give it no thought at all. She's walking away. He's standing his ground. He says, actually, Haley does work there. She stops walking. He says, I spoke to her this afternoon. Donna turns. She's like, did you? He says, yeah, she happens to be someone I care about very much. Donna says, well, lucky her, because she's so bereft of people that care about her. It's so like, there's just so bitter. Like, this is tapping into something for Donna, though. We're about to land with a really great line in a minute. They're both now walking towards her house. Joe says, Donna, look. She turns, she's at her doorstep. He says, Gordon and I are getting started on a new idea that sprang from a whiff of a hint of a nothing comment you made. She kind of winces at that, like, he says, and I just want to be sure, human to human, that you're not planning to do something to screw us. Donna says, Jesus Christ, what kind of person do you think I am? Joe says, you tried to get me kicked off the browser project. You stole our idea for the web index. And those are just the California crimes. Don't get me started on Texas. Okay. To be fair, Joe, you're in a glass house of your own right now because you did so many things. Like, yes, you have these complaints about Donna, and Donna has many of her own against you. So, and even if we, as the audience, know that some of those things were not, like, for example, season 2, all the stuff that happened with Mutiny and West Group, like, we as an audience know that Joe maybe had decent intentions with that, but Donna wouldn't. So, okay. Anyway, don't get me started on the Texas crimes. Donna says, okay, you know what? You're right. I'm not a trustworthy person. The best thing you can do is leave me the hell alone. She opens her door. She goes inside. He puts his hand up on the door frame to lean on it. It's like to lean his whole body against the door frame. He's like, believe me, nothing would make me happier. Unfortunately, Donna explodes, and this surprises him. She says, Jesus Christ, you won. Okay, you won. You got Haley and Gordon and Cam. You got everybody. What more do you want from me? So there's like this real, they've been sort of at each other's level, both willing to go sort of head to head against each other since season one. And Donna's saying, you won. Also, this is a level of rage that I think Donna had been masking for a long time by not drinking, by drinking. And now that she's either not drinking or drinking less, because we saw her have a glass of wine playing Pilgrim, I actually wonder, now that I'm saying that, I wonder if they got the footage for this shot with Pilgrim at the same time as they were getting the footage of her other shots of playing Pilgrim, because they put all of the, like, I think it was a green screen on the computer. So they would have put all of that footage in post. So if they had Donna drinking a glass of wine, they could have shot that footage when they were shooting her playing the game in one of the previous episodes. And then in that context, the wine would have made sense. I think that she doesn't drink now or hasn't been drinking now. So my instinct on this is it's a continuity thing, actually, that she, if they had shot this in order, that she wouldn't be drinking the wine here. I don't know. I'm landing on that as I'm talking it through. But like, I think that she was masking her level of rage, and she was like coping and putting on a smile, fake smile face, because she was always drunk or a little tipsy. And now that she's not in that place, like, she's going to explode on Joe. She's, you got everybody. What more do you want from me? And for emphasis, she slams the door, but his hands in the door frame, and she slams it on his hand. He's like, ow. And she gasps, and compassionate Donna's face comes out, and she's like, oh my God. And so now this is going to be a reason why he's going to go inside of her house, and they're going to spend some time talking. And that's going to be important, because then that's how she's going to be able to connect with him to say that Gordon died. So the timing of this is actually pretty critical. I like that the way, I feel like there's almost a science to how all of this was put together, and like having this whole conversation crossing her lawn and him following her, and then the stopping and then the following. And then you have to get to a point where he could get to the door frame and get his hand crushed in it. So there's a lot of technical stuff that needed to line up here. And I think they found this beautiful, really organic way to do it. So now they're inside her house in the kitchen. He's got ice on his hand. Donna's looking at him concerned. He's looking at her skeptically, kind of protectively, like, back away from my hand. Donna says, sure they're not broken? He looks at his hand. He mutters. He's like, I'm pretty sure. He pauses. He's earned this. He says, level with me. How come you're off, Rover? She says, well, it's a long story. She looks miserable. She says, the short version, it wasn't up to me. He says, sorry I got in your face. She shakes her head. He holds up his hand. He's like, don't think I deserved this. She feels bad. He sees that. He smiles. She says, I didn't do that on purpose. He smiles. He's reassuring. He's like, Donna, come on. Of course I do. Like, I know you wouldn't physically hurt me. Donna says, and I would never do anything to interfere with Comet. Really, I'm not that person. Even if Haley weren't there, I wouldn't. She's disappointed that he doesn't get that. Like, that she even has to explain that, and that he might not believe it. And he gets that. He says, I get it, Donna. Like, it's hurtful to be thought of that way. I've been there. And I think that more describes season 2 Joe than season 1 Joe. But I think season 2 Joe can relate to how Donna's feeling right now. She nods, and for a moment, they both see each other. And the camera, we're going to see the camera now. The angle shifts to an angle from like the corner of the ceiling, looking sort of at an angle down at them. And she just exhales. And now is where this is going to crush me. Okay. Gordon is in his house. He's getting ready for Katie to come over. He's at the front door mirror. There's a mirror near the front door. And he's sort of like, he's, fixing up his shirt. He's tucking in his shirt. He clears his throat. We've seen him clearing his throat a couple times in this episode. I feel like that might have been a choice. Maybe something to do with like, maybe there was like a dry mouth situation happening or something. I don't know. He rubs his face. The front door open, and we know he was overheating before too. So I don't know. There might be a few different things that are actual symptoms that we've been seeing. The front door opens and it's not Katie that comes in. It's Donna. Donna enters, like today's version of Donna, dressed like she's going to a day of ag work. She's got her reversible watch on that we've seen her flip over before. Her hair is down at the length that it is now in the show. She walks past him without seeing him. The lights start to flare a little bit, and Gordon's confused because why would Donna just be walking in and ignoring him? Gordon says, Donna, what are you doing here? He starts following her through the house. She hasn't noticed him. More lights flaring. Now he sees her in the living room. She is sitting down like she's been there for a while. Her hair is now up. She's got a casual shirt on and a jacket over it, different outfit from what she was wearing before. The jacket looks like it has pretty big shoulder pads, so I'm thinking we've gone back to the 80s at some point. And she's working, and he's confused. What are you doing? The lights start to flare more. We hear the sound of a young child. It could have been Joni, it could have been Haley. Mommy, mommy. She gets up to go to the child. This eerie Paul Hasslinger tonal music starts, and then it softens a bit. Gordon gets up and walks to start following Donna. The lights are flaring a bit more. He is now in the kitchen, and we're going to see a mid-80s Donna in his home. This is not a shared home. He's not going back to the home that he lived in with Donna then. It's his home, and Donna's in it like she's a mid-80s version of herself. She's getting food cereal for young Joni and Haley, and they're both there. This is a different Joni and Haley from the Joni and Haley that we saw in seasons 1 and 2 and 3. So the girls go out with their cereal. She goes and she follows them into the next room, and now Gordon follows, and the lights are flaring more. We're going to see Gordon pause as he gets in front of 2 arched doorways. It's like, I don't know that it's pearly gates-esque, but it's 2 arched doorways that are right in front of him, and he pauses physically. And the Baby Mine instrumental starts. Gordon, so we've heard this song before. Okay, I'll come back to that in a moment. Gordon starts walking towards the arches as Baby Mine instrumentals are playing. The light flare gets brighter and brighter. And now we can hear Donna humming Baby Mine. The light flares a lot more, and Gordon gets to the doorway of present day Haley's door at his place, the doorway that he walked through earlier to look around her room. He's back in front of that door right now. We go through the open door. We see the rocket. We see Haley's things are there, but Gordon is hallucinating Donna. We see Donna holding a baby, singing, "Baby mine, don't you cry, baby mine, dry your eyes." The baby's crying. Um, I've been told that it was Baby Joni, but we know that Donna sings that song. So we know from season 2 that Donna sings that song to Haley to calm her down. She sings it in the episode when Gordon goes to visit his brother. Um, and so I connect that song more with Haley, but people have told me that she's holding Baby Joni. Gordon is looking on as he sees his wife, so much younger, holding his baby child, singing, humming "Baby Mine" and singing "Baby Mine." Gordon's looking on. The camera starts to get out of focus on his face. The light is flaring so much, and finally, Vision Donna looks at him, directly at him for the first time. Gordon tears up. A light shines brightly behind him, and then the whole frame is getting brighter as Gordon just like fades into white. So this is so beautiful. I remember the first time I was watching this, and I remember thinking, because we never see dead Gordon. We never actually see, like, we've seen him pass out before. We've seen him fall. We've seen some scary moments with Gordon for his health. And this was done so artistically. And I remember the first time I watched this, and it got, partway, and maybe by the time I saw Donna in the living room working, and I was like, oh my God, this is so beautiful. I remember thinking, this is so beautiful. And it's just the way they did this. At the end of his life, he recreates a pathway that we saw him take earlier in this episode, walking into Haley's room. This man dies in Haley's room, which, if you're Haley, how do you go back into that room? He walks through the house recreating this pathway, recreating the, like, finding out who his daughter is, but this time he's, of all of the people that he could be revisiting as he's like passing on, he is remembering the best, most loving images of Donna. Like, he's sort of going back to the beginning, rewinding through time, and it's like that's the person that's always been his most important. They could have done this so many different ways, but at the end of it all, like, of all of the professional pursuits that he's had, it was his family. It was Donna and his kids that were the most important thing to him in that moment. They could have showed us shots of Donna and Joe and Cam and Boz and all these things. They could have shown us flashbacks of his days at Cardiff Electric and going back and Mutiny and going back in time that way. But there was just this core connection with Donna. And for those of you who, like, I was trying to sort of say this without spoiling anything, but there have been a number of times this season where we've called back to the song "Baby Mine," because remember, we heard that song in season 2 when Donna sings it to Haley to help her go to sleep in the hotel room. But we saw it, we saw in season 4 episode 1 in the fairly long, like, first 4 minutes that looks like a oneer but isn't. There's a point when Gordon goes to dial Cam's number, but he's just dialing a number. He's not actually picking up the receiver, and he's dialing the tune to "Baby Mine" over and over. And then there was an episode later after we meet Katie where Gordon says to Katie, "There's this song I have in my head, but I can't remember what it is." And he's humming it to her, and she's giving guesses, but it's not the answer. It was always "Baby Mine." And so this song has been in his head, in his conscious thought, for a while. And it just shows, like, how long this decline has been there between the lights flaring and the song being in his head. Like, this has been coming for a while. And it's so freaking pretty. And it's so sad. And it's like so peaceful at the same time. Like, if this is what it's like to die, this isn't so bad. Like I just, how very softly, he's sort of like ushered out of this world. We don't see the violence of death here. We see the love and the family. Like, because at the core of this, all of these characters feel like my family. And I think from some of the comments that people have been sharing through their feedback, I think they feel like family to all of us. I think this is a hangout show that we want to spend time with these people. And this is the family at the center of the whole family, right? Like, this has been an enduring love relationship that's taken different shapes in season 4 for us, but is still, I mean, at the end of the day, Donna is what Gordon was thinking about at the end of it all. Speaking of who, present day Donna, real Donna, is in her home. She's walking Joe to the door. As all of this was happening, Donna and Joe were patching things up, and they're going to need each other in a second. He's holding ice on his hand. She says, "Are you sure you can drive okay?" He says, "I'm fine." They get to the front door. She opens it. She says, "Well, I hope it goes great, whatever the idea is." He walks out. She says, "Really, I do." He looks back. He's like, "Mm-hmm." He keeps walking. She says, "What are you going to tell people about your hand?" She sort of holds up her hand. He looks back while he's walking. He says, "Punched a wall." And then he actually turns around to her and walks backwards. So he's addressing her. He says, "Because I couldn't find what I was looking for on Rover." That feels like the best, like, I forgive you type of a way to end that scene. She chuckles. She goes inside. She shuts the door. We're going to see Katie open Gordon's door. This is a hard episode to cover. Katie is like, "Gordon." She brought wine. She puts her bag down. She walks into Gordon's house. "Gordon, where are you?" We're going to pause there. We're going to go back to Joe. He's sitting in his car. He's icing his hand. We need a reason to keep Joe there. So he's icing his hand. He's trying to test out if he's going to be able to drive with this thing. He's stretching his fingers. He's kind of wincing in pain. He might need to ice it a little more. Inside her home, Donna's going to call Gordon because, can you believe it? She just talked with Joe and it didn't end terribly. It started terribly, but didn't end terribly. She gets Gordon's answering machine. "Hello, you've reached Gordon Clark." No, she didn't. She's never going to. He says, "I'm not here right now. Please leave a message," that he will never get. She says, "Hey there, it's me. You'll never guess who I just spent a very civilized hour with." We switch to a view of Gordon's home. We see the camera is behind a phone. Katie, out of focus, starts walking briskly towards the phone. She gets closer and closer. She gets into focus and we can see her face. She's stunned. Donna is continuing as we see Katie walking to the phone. She says, "I mean, I guess it didn't start out civilized, but..." Katie picks up the phone and in the greatest line read of one word, she's like, "Donna," like you can hear the way her voice is cracking, the complete urgency of the situation. She just found dead Gordon in Haley's bedroom. She's what a sort of like the new girlfriend and the ex-wife, and like for Donna to be calling at that very moment, and it was exactly when Katie needed her, and so Katie just being like, "Donna," and these two characters haven't really interacted that we've seen, and yet just the way she says Donna's voice, it's like, you're needed right now. We hold on Donna's face as it just falls. Then we go out to Joe. We see that he's still waiting. He's starting to get ready to drive. He hasn't turned on the car yet, but it looks like he's sorted things out enough with his hand. We see him from outside his window. We can look through his window to him, past him, to Donna's front door. And we see Donna walk to her front door, open the door, start walking out towards Joe. He's in focus and she's out of focus at first. And then the camera switches focus. He's looking at her now, and she's sort of gesturing that she needs to talk to him. He gets out of his car. Donna walks closer. He walks around the front of his car, and she says, "Gordon's dead." And it is the only time we'll hear that in this episode. Joe's face falls. They're standing there bathed in the white light of a street lamp. Now we're going to see Cam. She's getting ready to meet Alexa for dinner. She's looking in the mirror. She's fixing her hair like Gordon had just been doing. The phone rings. The answering machine picks it up. "This is Cameron. Leave a message." Joe's very soft voice says, "Cam, it's me." Cam goes to pick it up. She very cheerily says hi because she doesn't know yet. It's this like the last time she's going to feel cheery for a while. For her, everything is normal for a second. She says hi, and then we get a wider shot and she sucks in a breath. Now we're going to see Boz in his garage as the song "Empty Rooms" starts from Paul Hesslinger. What a good song. Boz is working on tying some flies. He gets one stuck to his finger. He's kind of cursing at it. "Damn it, come on." We're going to hear the phone ring inside the house. Diane comes to the interior garage door. She's standing in a robe. She's kind of like holding it together, sort of clutching herself. And she looks stunned. She's holding the phone. She says very softly, "John." We see his face close up. He's like, "What happened?" And then he sees her face and he's a little alarmed. He's like, "What?" And now we're going to see, because Joni and Haley were out at the movies together. Joni's driving them home. She pulls up into Gordon's driveway. Joni and Haley get out of the car. They're going to walk up the path to the front door. They start to walk up the steps and they stop because Donna's sitting there crying, waiting for them. I assume at this point, Gordon has been taken away, but if he hasn't, he's in Haley's room. So Donna breathes in deeply, because how do you deliver this news? Like, how do you tell like your kids? Then we're going to see the aftermath of that. We're going to see Donna holding Haley in bed. I'm actually not sure what room they're in right now. I should have looked more. I thought I was thinking to look for this, but I'm telling you, deep diving into this episode almost killed me. So let me know if you know that detail. Whose bed are they in right now? Are they in Gordon's house, or are they back at Donna's house? Probably Donna's. So Donna's holding Haley in bed. We see Joni come into the doorway and she looks at them, and Donna sort of waves for Joni to come into bed too. She holds, both girls as they all cry together, and Joni reaches out to hold Haley's hand, and they're in the dark. They're just crying together. Just so softly, like we only need to hear once that Gordon died. Just looking at these scenes and knowing, okay. And then we're going to see Cam enter the Comet office, looking just devastated. She's looking for Joe. As she's walking into the room, the first camera angle that we're going to see here is actually a camera set up behind the Comet neon sign up against the wall, looking out, kind of like there was a scene at the end of season one where everybody was being called in to collect their Cardiff Electric money, and Joe and Gordon are waiting in the waiting room, and we got a scene from behind like the frosted glass behind the Cardiff Electric branding. This kind of reminded me of that, because we're seeing like the sign of comet that we're used to seeing that sort of greeted you and when you walked into the room, we're behind it now looking out. It's almost like Gordon's trapped behind it. The camera then comes down from the sign as Cam's walking towards it, walking further into the room. She's crying. She's walking very slowly. And then we're going to see a wide shot from the front door, walking with Cameron walking further into the room towards the conference room. We can see Joe in the conference room sitting with his back to us, looking at the whiteboard. He's far away from us. Cam's walking towards him. Cam goes up the stairs. She looks at Joe through the window first. We see her reflection in the window. Joe is sitting up straight, looking with an unbreaking focus at this word relaunch, the last conversation he ever had with Gordon, and the last message from Gordon to him is this word relaunch. The camera zooms in on the word relaunch, so you know that Joe's taking something from that word. Cam very gently opens the door, and once again, she doesn't come to make physical contact with Joe. She stands up against the door, just like tearing up and crying. Joe sort of looks back at her, but in profile, he doesn't turn all the way around so we can see both of their faces. There's no connection between them. And the credits roll in silence. Yeah. When I was trying to watch, obviously from when the death sequence starts, I was just, because I'm pausing every couple seconds, pretty much taking notes, looking at the frame, like taking dialogue down, and I was just crying so much trying to watch this. Like, I usually can get through it without like crying so much, but then to just be sitting with it for that long. I don't know how people edited this episode. I don't know how people directed this episode and did multiple takes of this on set. I just don't. God, this was the delivery of this stuff. Katie saying Donna, like, the image of seeing Donna in bed with her girls, just holding them and all of them crying in the middle, in the darkness. Look, this is just a devastating episode, and that we're going to have to deal with this in the next episode, right? If you're brand new to this show, they don't just like turn around and have a funny episode next episode. We have to deal with this. So brace yourself, please. Like, come talk with us, all of us fans, about it, because like we're the community that gets it. We understand. But this episode is just so beautiful. Like, the way they just hinted things without showing you, and the way they give us reactions without beating you over the head with it. It's just, okay. Music from this episode. I want to get to some feedback here. So music from this episode first. One song was Summer Babe, the winter version by Pavement from 1992. That's while Cam is working on her game. There was a song later with Cam in the Airstream and Joe was there that I don't know what it was. So if anybody happens to know, let me know. I'm gonna, Paul Huslinger does so many great, he's scored this show, and so there's so many great songs from him. But I think Empty Rooms, in Gordon's death sequence, especially when it starts around when we see Boz, it's one of the finer moments. I think it's people reacting to Gordon's death. And I'm going to put Baby Mine here too. Technically, like what we hear is Donna humming it and then singing it, but it was originally sung by Betty Noyes. It's a song that I know from the movie Dumbo. In terms of favorite quotes, I have a number of honorable mentions from throughout the episode and then a favorite. I'm going to give the favorite to Gordon because I think that's earned. But we'll start with one that's a combo of Joni and Gordon. You're seriously not going to say anything about the haircut, says Joni. And Gordon says, do you seriously think that would help? Really good point. It probably wouldn't. I have a quote from Joe. It's been a pleasure to fall asleep and wake up in your workspace. That pretty much signals where they are right now in their relationship, Cam and Joe. Diane has a quote, we got the message loud and clear about not living forever. For Diane to say that to Donna, and then for Donna to now be on the receiving end of that message as well, resonates longer and louder by the end of this episode. Cam at one point says, my brain is not as tidy as this. Seems fair. Another honorable mention is from Joe. Look, nobody knows better than me how impossible working with your father is. He's moody, impatient, ungrateful, and the know-it-all problem is legendary. And it's such a mean line, and it's so funny the way that it plays out. It's said with nothing but love for all characters. I'm going to give my favorite line to Gordon. And it's not an appropriately dark line, but it is a line that absolutely had to be the best line. Well, it's pretty short, like shorter than Dorothy Hamill's, but not as short as Mark Hamill's, somewhere mid Hamill. What a line. So well written. Nailed it. Oh my God. Okay. Look, I'm going to get into some feedback here. I think it's worth noting that the feedback, obviously, it's not feedback that directly addresses Gordon's death because we've been trying not to spoil that. But there is some feedback here that I felt like would help me talk a little bit about Gordon's death, and then a few other areas as well. So I wanted to pick out feedback respectfully and appropriately for this as much as I could. But we'll start with some feedback from Synthetic Gerbil. The first one is actually from the interview that I did with Juan Campanella, who directed 5 episodes of this show, the most of any director, and he directed the pilot. And most of the episodes he directed, I think all of them were either season openers or finales. Synthetic Gerbil said, this was a very juicy interview. It's very interesting to note that Juan Campanella didn't seem to know exactly when Gordon would die or how it was depicted, because as you say in this interview, it really does seem like it's being played within the montage in terms of the lens flare, right as Gordon is tapping Baby Mine out on the phone, and the faraway dream feeling around the scenes where it shows Gordon and Joe camping, but the giant is on the table in the woods. I think maybe they do the lens flare at least 1 or 2 times in between in the rest of the season, but I could be mistaken. Now that we've done so good, now that we've done this deep dive, I think we've uncovered like even more instances so many times with lens flares in progressively starker ways. The tapping out of the Baby Mine, the trying to remember the song Baby Mine, but also I really liked that Synthetic Gerbil mentioned that, in the what looked like a oneer but wasn't a oneer time-lapse sequence montage in the beginning of 401. It sort of at the end of it gets to a place where Joe is sitting out in the woods next to the giant that we saw in the pilot. Like we've sort of recreated some of the things on that work table in that scene in the woods. And it's all part of like is this in Gordon's head? One of the things I loved about the way they opened season 4 is that whole montage begs you to remember that not only is time passing and we're in Gordon's perspective, but that his brain is declining. He's rubbing his head. You're seeing things that you're really not sure if you're seeing those things. All of that stuff, I think, opens the season in a way that makes you remember what Gordon is dealing with, even if it's not addressing it exactly head on. From 406, Synthetic Gerbil mentioned How of It All is also a real page you can find online. I almost forget. I think it's howofitall.com, but also in a previous episode, I had put the link to the entire Comet website that's still online. So I'll try to remember to put it into the description, the link to it in the description as well, so that we can access those. Because yeah, you can find that page online. But also for this episode, Synthetic Gerbil says, I think to circle back to my comments before, I think Gordon says it best about Donna that she is all those versions of herself. Just a very multifaceted character. But unfortunately, her worst side got the better of her for so long. However, even as you've picked out over the last few episodes, some of the more compassionate Donna tries to break free. And of course, she never becomes ruthless Donna around her children, or maybe even Gordon. Just like in the last episode, she needed Gordon's comfort to talk about the fight with Boz beneath that angry veneer she had in the situation, and how deeply it actually affected her. Now she's needing Gordon to risk driving and take care of her, even after she's hit rock bottom drunk driving. So this is in response to the very compassionate conversation Gordon has with Donna after picking her up from the station. And, he's saying like, yeah, you've got all these sides of you, but they're all you, and I love you. Man. And then, you get to an episode like this, and there's just so much more weight around that being a message that he shared with Donna at the end of his life. So good. I've got a comment here from @Patrick Squires 77 from 405. The light around Gordon as he came through the door. If I remember the description correctly, I tried to rewind later and find the timestamp, but could not. The play with the sunlight coming through in a few scenes and the light washing, I think, culminates to the major lens flare moment later in this season. That's the kind of spoiler-free commenting we've all been trying to do. Thank you. As does the recent soft focus at times of Donna mentioned, comes into play in the same lens flare scene later. Oh, that's interesting. Patrick Squires has like little sad emojis like all throughout this. Maybe it's made up in my head, but it's like an artistic film, seated visual premonition that makes the later scene feel well placed. Such a great show. It's so artistically done. I think I have to agree. I think the fact, having just mentioned Juan Campanella, Juan Campanella was the director of the pilot episode and really set a tone and a visual style for this show where you could set up the camera anywhere. You could do a creative shot. You could do an interesting shot with the camera moving in a way that just represented what you wanted to say in the scene in a different way. It wasn't just, I'm going to put the camera here and point it this way, and then I'm going to point it this way, and I'm going to be done. It was whatever. Anything you wanted to do, you could do. And I think that really pays off by the time you get to this episode, because we're able to depict things about Gordon's death that the show has given us room to do. They've been playing with the light for a while, so it doesn't catch us off guard when we see it happening in this episode. We've been seeing it. We were seeing it especially a lot when Gordon was burning his notebooks of symptoms that he recorded in that montage with Donna playing Pilgrim to the tune of the PJ Harvey song. We've been seeing this stuff for a while, and it's been progressing. So it's been something that we've been sort of nurtured into as much as possible. So I love that Patrick Squire 77 is raising that here. Even the fact that when we see Katie pick up the phone, like the camera's behind the phone as she walks towards it. That's another type of choice that you couldn't have made if you didn't allow for choices like that from the beginning of the show. Or like, the camera being set up from inside the Comet sign looking out, like Gordon is now the spirit of Comet looking out on the office. Okay. A comment from Present Hour 24 from 210. And look, not every comment feels exactly directly relevant to what's happening in the episode here, but I really wanted to, in an episode like this, acknowledge frequent commenters as much as I possibly could and try to work in like anything that felt relevant. So Present Hour 24 shared a comment from 210 that I wanted to share here. I also noticed in this episode that this is when Joe decides to not destroy out of anger, but instead look at security, which was originally Gordon's idea of hope. It seems like yesterday, says Joe. Yeah, it seems like forever ago, says Gordon. That moment stood out for me. Joe and Gordon were not on the same page at all. That last part of what you wrote, Present Hour 24, feels so perfect in looking at the last conversation Joe and Gordon will ever have. This whole little, it's a little spat about redesign, relaunch. You know, Gordon wants to do a redesign, relaunch. Joe doesn't initially, but Joe comes around. And then they start brainstorming together and they get inspired together and they're a good team. And then they sit down and they have this fight, like redesign, relaunch, and Gordon caves on that point. And so the last word that Gordon writes on the board is relaunch. And it's him giving that concession to Joe, but they still have the same vision. And there's something about even these little like pushes and pulls between them that feel so fundamentally healthy and respectful in how they communicate with each other that I know they would have been fine. And I know that they were on the right track. I mean, when you compare that to how Joe and Cam are communicating, or when you compare that to how Cam and Alexa have been communicating, there's something that's so they're in such Joe and Gordon are in such a good place. And even these moments where they're like not seeing exactly the same thing, it feels complementary in a way that's going to be helpful to them because they're willing to hear each other out. So Amelia Flowers has a few thoughts that I wanted to share from 308. First of all, I love the scene with Gordon and Joe. It starts so fun, then turns when Gordon finally admits he's sick. They were at Gordon's home and there were holiday decorations around them. So it turns when Gordon finally admits he's sick. Yet more amazing physical acting by Lee as he spirals as to what that means. Particularly poignant after losing Simon to AIDS, his lover's positive test and his own test, and is no doubt aware of many others in the community. Joe's apartment, Lee Pace, is so masterful in this scene, all in his reactions, and some are so subtle. You know, Amelia, when you wrote this around 308, it really hit home with me how much loss Joe has experienced in his life. How many times people have come to him to say he's sick. And sometimes that might have felt like directly relevant to his own health, and sometimes maybe not. But he has lost both of his parents. He's lost 2 lovers. He's lost his best friend now. His world is just full of, and you know, Boz had a health scare in a couple episodes ago and came out on the other side of it. He's alive, but like, it's scary stuff to be in Joe's world. You know, the amount of loss that man has experienced. Such a good point, Amelia. Now, Amelia also shares a thought from 306 that I wanted to bring in about the series of scenes really where Gordon and Cam are playing Super Mario Brothers, which are fun scenes. This scene also made me think a lot about how Cam chooses to end her games, the ones we know of anyway. The first space spike, she tells Tom, you just get to keep playing, following this model. But Pilgrim in season 4, as a gaming culture is developing even more, it has an ending. Really good point. I think there's going to be another comment later about endings of games. But yeah, that was something to really note. Like the idea that you get to just keep playing of the original Space Spike game that she shares with Tom is like an idea that's really endearing to him. He thinks it's so wonderful. He thinks everything she does is wonderful. And so, you know, it felt like a real message about life, you know, that you just get to keep playing. Like No matter what's happening, no matter what comes apart, you get to try again, you reinvent, keep playing. In the episode of Gordon's death, to find out that her pilgrim had an ending, that sometimes you don't get to keep playing, sometimes that's the end. And then for Gordon to die, her friend, it just feels so well placed in sequencing in this episode. Okay, and one more comment from 406 from Amelia Flowers. I'd always thought how lovely it was that Haley sent the fan page to Cam. We know how much Joni fangirled over her, learning Japanese and telling her friends, but Haley is more introverted. Cam's relationship with the girls is more like big sister or cool auntie. Cool auntie. She always had that part of her, and that it continues without meaning she wants to be a mother is authentic for her. Strangely, just this morning, I was reading an article about mothers who regretted having children. There's not a lot of research or people willing to talk about it, but the main person interviewed, who changed her name, cited so much pressure and the constant guilt tripping and things like, you'll feel different when it's your own child. If you're interested in learning more about where that comment was headed, Amelia had a lot more to share in the comment from episode 406. So check that out. It was pretty fascinating. But I like this idea that as much as I think of Joe as like the cool uncle, Cam is like the cool aunt. Maybe more like the big sister. I do feel a more sisterly energy with her, especially towards Joni. We're used to seeing that with Joni, even in season 3 when they first move to California and Cam's living with the Clarks. And they have that earthquake. Right before the earthquake, we see that Joni and Cam have a really good rapport with each other. But we also see that when the earthquake happens, Cam runs out of the room, leaves Joni behind, and runs for comfort herself from Donna and Gordon. And Joni is just like left to fend for herself. So I think of her as like the bigger sister in a way. And in that way, maybe she is like looking for parenting from Gordon and Donna in that moment for security and protection. But yeah, the fact that Haley sent the fan page to Cam, it's like, no, like there's this relationship between all of them. And that's Cam's going to be an important figure in Haley and Joni's life right now with what just happened. Right, we've got some comments from Frack and Toaster Lava. First from 402. The fact that Joe, so this is the long phone call episode. The fact that Joe was dressed as a pilgrim in his TV appearance is no coincidence because Joe tells the story. I feel that the show is hinting something about Cameron's game that way. Cam says it's a game you live. Pilgrim. I've seen various posts by people trying to interpret the game, and with some exceptions, most seem to see it as Cameron's game about herself, where the pilgrim is Cameron and the players are supposed to figure her out. I don't think that's all it's about. The show here hints that Joe is also a pilgrim. I think the game puts the player in the role of the pilgrim who's trying to find, no spoilers, let's just say whatever the pilgrim is looking for. And Joe is also searching for something, going on a pilgrimage, similarly as Cameron is. Something to think about later when we get more info on the game. Really cool. Now that we've actually seen this game play out, I'd love people's comments on Pilgrim. Because we've seen so much of the show now. There are fewer spoilers to be protected of, but there may be still some things in the last few episodes of this series, but this game has an ending. And so who do you think this was about? I also think it's particularly of interest because this isn't something I really clocked before, but that moment when the pathway explodes and instead of being completely stopped and starting the game over, Donna figures out that the pilgrim can jump down and dive into the void towards the light, which for me, in the context of this episode, makes me think about Gordon. I don't know if you can think of Gordon as Pilgrim, but I'm curious if there is any tie there for anybody who's watching this. Does that track at all if you actually think about it more? Because Gordon's going into the light just as much as he is consumed by a white light at the end of his hallucinations of Donna. So that's something. Now, Frack and Toaster Love also has a comment from 405. Rid of Me by PJ Harvey was one of my favorite songs, and her album of the same name was one of my favorite albums of the early 90s. PJ Harvey is one of my favorite artists and has since released many more great albums. My favorite is 1997, Is This Desire. Another favorite is her beautiful 2007 chamber folk album, White Chalk. And her last year album, I Inside the Old Year Dying, is in a similar musical style. She's changed in mixed musical genres or styles many times, but is still always recognizable and great. I was happy to hear this great song on the show, but I'm still trying to figure out the meaning of its use in the last scene. Is it about individual lyrics matching certain moments, as with the line about the fire at the end as Gordon is burning his logs? Or is it about the overall meaning of the song? The song is about being desperate to keep your lover from leaving you, which at times is a plea and at other times is a threat or an order, and gets increasingly more unhinged. This could refer to multiple people in the show who were desperate to save a relationship at some point, but how does it relate to the people in that scene? While lines like "You're Not Rid of Me" and "Don't You Wish You Never Met Her" could be about how Donna sees Cam's role in her life, when taken separately from the rest of the song, I feel that at this point, Donna is the one who's almost obsessively thinking about Cameron and her anger and bitterness at Cameron because of her rejection in 310. She's full of rage and paranoia, and now she's completely wrapped in Cameron's game and trying to figure it out, like trying to find a way into Cam. Gordon is meanwhile getting rid of his longtime obsession with his health status and deciding to just enjoy life in the present, and has moved on to a completely new romantic relationship, while Donna is struggling with her past and trying to make sense of it or fix it. But I feel that I would need many rewatches to fully figure out this scene and the details of the Pilgrim Game. I'm curious, actually, Frack and Toaster Lover, now that you've seen the end of the Pilgrim Game, does that influence what you said in this comment at all? Do you have more of an interpretation now to add to this? But I love all of this context about the PJ Harvey song. Obviously, what Frack and Toaster Lover here is referencing is the ending montage of the last episode, where, or of 405, I should say, where we get scenes back and forth between Donna playing Pilgrim and Gordon burning his notebooks. So a couple things that I had mentioned in a comment back to Frack and Toaster Lover, but I wanted to say it here as well, is that one of the things that came out of my interview with Thomas Golovich, who was the music supervisor, was that it wasn't for him always about finding lyrics that matched up, but about finding tones that felt right. So I think the way he felt about the music was he thought about tone of music, and he was looking for what would place correctly in the scene. So if that's how he was looking at this song, think about how the tone of Rid of Me feels in the context of these scenes playing out. I do think, though, there's also another interpretation of the, "Don't You Wish You Never Met Her" or "You're Not Rid of Me" could be something meant for a literal relationship with another person, but it also could be your relationship to something that you've been occupied with. So "Don't You Wish You Never Met Her." Maybe Gordon feels that way about his anxiety towards his illness. Maybe Donna feels that way about her hatred and her feelings of anger that have come from Cam, not necessarily Cam herself, but from the feelings that came with it. So when people call a boat a she or something like that, it's maybe the obsession or the feeling of the anger are the thing that needs to be rid of. So I don't know, there's a bunch of different ways to look at this. So I'd be curious now, after getting the ending of the game, how much does that influence how you look at that scene? Okay, we've got a comment from Sergio from 406, the last episode. Gordon bailing out Donna after a DUI. Nice callback to Donna bailing out Gordon after a DUI in episode 1 of season 1. Synergy. I think Donna's quote about being stronger in the broken places is a reference to Hemingway. The world breaks everyone, and afterward many are strong at the broken places, but those that will not break, it kills. Whoa, didn't know that line. That is really pertinent now when I think about this episode, isn't it? Good catch, Sergio. Thank you for that, for bringing that comment in. I've got a comment from @CamHouseGF from 406. Beautiful episode from start to finish. Love the rocket scene with my whole heart, as well as the Joe Haley restaurant scene. This episode plays so well with the found family trope. There are lots of scenes that solidified my perception of these characters as little family, not like I didn't think of them like that before. The dynamic between Joe and Haley is one of my favorite aspects of the show. Not only did Joe have the opportunity to watch Haley grow up and babysit her when she was younger, but he also connects with her on a deeper level. It's heartwarming to see Joe being a cool uncle to her. That scene of Donna singing We Belong while driving is amazing. But what I love the most is how the scene that comes after, when Gordon picks her up from the police station, kind of parallels with the pilot when we first see Gordon and Donna. It doesn't matter if they're divorced, they still care for each other. And everything Gordon tells Donna in this scene is just so beautiful. Honors the title of the episode. I can't wait for 407, although I'm already heartbroken because of what's happening or what's coming. Oh, so many good comments. Yeah, the Joe and Haley connection. And I think in absolute conversation with everything that we see in this episode, because Gordon now knows what Joe was trying to tell him. Gordon is trying to understand his child. He knows that Joe has a very specific connection with Haley that Gordon would never have. And he's entrusting Joe in this episode to take care of Haley in that way, to get her back onto the team with the people that love her for who she is. And I think that I don't know if Joe and Gordon have ever, in all of the time that they've spent with each other after Gordon revealed his illness to Joe, I don't know if they ever had a conversation about what would happen with Gordon or what would happen with Gordon's kids after he passed. But I feel like in the way this episode plays out, he's really asking Joe to look after Haley at the very least in his way. He's like giving him his blessing to take care of Haley in ways that Gordon cannot, which now is in every way. And so it's so beautiful coming off the last episode with Joe and Haley at Hound Dogs. And then all of the Gordon and Donna stuff, after we see, the echo between the drunk driving, the DUI from the pilot to the last episode, but reversed. We see them picking each other up from stations in those episodes, and we hear how much Gordon loves her. And then in this episode, he's dying, and we don't see something horrific on screen with Gordon. We see beautiful, soft, loving visions of Donna. I think it really builds from 406. And now some comments from Evan the Stray. First of all, a quick comment that was in a couple places, but in a response to Frack and Toaster Love's comment from 405. Evan the Stray says, I'll drop this here, but it's also in the 406 comments. Joe's box on the chair in his office is a Joyce Chen brand wok. Evan, I don't even know how you spotted that. So, yes, when Joe is so like antsy and anxious about the fight that he had with Cam, and he breaks the wok in his kitchen, we're going to see that Cam has bought a wok to replace the broken one, and Joe apparently has bought a wok to replace the broken one. Joe's, the one that he bought, is on the chair across from his desk in his office, and Gordon goes to sit in the chair to have a conversation with Joe. He lifts a box out of the chair, and it's moving very quickly. Like, he moves it in seconds. So if you try to freeze the frame, it blurs. Evan the Stray has such an eagle eye that he spotted the brand of wok. All I could make out was it was probably a wok-like shape on the outside of the box. Evan's coming in with it's a Joyce Chen wok. Wow. Okay. It's a small point, but I think it needed to be raised here. Okay, now in response to this episode. Per IMDb, this is the highest rated Halt episode of the series at a 9.4 by a significant margin. The next highest is a 9.0, which is the following episode. After that, the next highest rating is 8.8 ratings for 109, 307, and 308. Interesting. Very good to know. 109 Comdex, 307 The Threshold, and 308. Interesting. Good to know. This show, to be fair, I was emotionally primed for the episode before starting it, so there's some effect of that mental state, much like going to a comedy club being prepared to laugh. I'm finding myself already getting choked up about Cam showing up for Boz at Palo Alto City Hall. Diane pulls Boz even closer relationally, despite what he kept from her, probably not just for tax and healthcare reasons, but to actually reassure him that he's safe with her, and hopefully she receives a more open him, safe harbor sailor. I feel like I fell in love with Diane in this scene through her actions. She believes Boz is a good man, and she displays resiliency past his fearful behavior as secrecy. Such love. What an incredibly rare and beautiful thing, something which to aspire. You don't have to tell me to love Diane even more. If you found another reason to love Diane, I'm in. I'm all in, always. I love Diane. I love her. Donna actually dons a genuine partial positivity smile at 4 minutes, 30 seconds into the episode when Tripp leaves her office, but from his statement of him being right about her taking care of herself. I'll reference the same expression later in the episode. Interesting. Stay tuned for this. The tables have turned from the 201 season opener where Joe is leaving for work and Cam wants him to stay to play Tank Battle. Now it's Joe staying home to watch video footage, wanting Cam to stay to watch it with him, and Cam going off to work. Then Cam's reference to Joe not coming out to the Airstream voluntarily. I mean, you love Cameron. Certainly you love Cameron more than you hate the Airstream. Why would you not be out there as much as possible with her? Just beg her to come to your apartment and sometimes, I don't know, entice her with the toilet paper pyramid, fresh cheese egg with green chilies, and Mario Kart. Fair. I mean, Evan, I think if we learn one thing about these two, it's that they're not on the same page, right? Gordon appears close to tears, looking around Haley's room after finding her biology test paper with an A on it. I'm only pointing this out because I didn't notice it the first time through, or don't remember noticing it. Gordon must be realizing what Joe meant in 406 while Gordon was painting his office window with a watery milkshake. I know. Yeah, I mean, look, I think he had the realization in the prior episode where he finds out the significance of the bird that was on the rocket, and it was on Vanessa in a couple places, and he's like, "Oh my God, Haley's into this girl," and that's a really big thing for his daughter to be grappling with in secret. She has this whole internal life and some really big things she's dealing with, and Gordon can't help her with it because he doesn't know those parts of her. And so I think I think it's just sitting in her room wondering, like, how many other things is he not helping her with because he doesn't know about them yet. Joe is talking about building in the country, a house. That's a big bend for Joe, especially after stating his fear of the click beetles in 404. Joe says to Cam, I feel like our hiking window is slipping away. It also feels like a metaphor about their grasp on their relationship. All of that, I totally agree. I think about the fact that, at the end of season 1, Joe goes off on a hike to SETI, or to the astronomy center. I'm forgetting the word for this. And then we see in season 2 that he goes for runs. And so he's done his share of like being in the outdoors, but there's, a difference between living in a house with some comfort or living in the Airstream, which doesn't seem to have as much comfort as he wants. So Joe's facial expression when Gordon is adjusting or fixing the thermostat when he says, dance on the carcass of my company, is almost like he's feigning being appalled in an ever so slightly, possibly puppy, playful micro expression. Its purpose feels like softening the objection with a safe warmth for Gordon. Yeah, as much as these two sort of bicker and fight about things, it's never in a mean spirited way between them at this point in the series. Like it always feels like they're communicating well to me. Even in this, Joe has some real things that he's concerned about, and he's alerting Gordon to them, and he's also letting Gordon do his thing. Alexa cannot focus in Cam's camper. It's irritating me for Cam. That had to be a significant amount of work. But anyways, they go for a walk in the woods for Alexa to smoke a doobie. Maybe that helps her focus, but not my point. My point is that it feels to me like Cam is lost in the woods in her life and hasn't decided what she wants yet. It also kind of feels like she's tilting away from Joe and towards her work more by virtue of acquiescing to Alexa's implied hike. Yeah, I think that's another fun way of putting it, another angle to take into that. And I also think, I'm not sure that Cam's lost. Like at this moment, I actually think she just has to admit what she knows already, which is she doesn't want to work on Mars projects. She wants to work on a game with these characters that she's so excited about that she's losing track of time. She doesn't want kids. She doesn't want to settle down. Like there are things we know very strongly about her that I think that she kind of knows herself too, but she's not willing to put her foot down with people. Like she's not willing to have conflict conversations with people. She just did all that with Tom. So I don't know to what extent that's conscious for her or not, but I think she's people pleasing despite knowing what lights her fire. Joe is holding the flashlight behind Gordon, and initially it looks like the lights or light effects behind Gordon all season. With the light being in such close proximity to Gordon, I'm wondering if this is symbolizing that the something is catching up with him. Almost there. Ooh. Good spot. I like the way you put that. That was good. Joe's phone call with Haley is just so lovingly sweet. Gordon gesturing that Joe can cut the insults of him. Just a wonderful scene. I know. And I keep coming back to the fact that in the middle of a funny, cute scene, Joe also says the most important thing that Haley has to hear. We need you. And that Haley's like, does my dad know that? And Joe's like, yes. That's important stuff in the middle of like the rest of it's cute and funny and needed, but that is like actually the core of the problem, I think. And he's addressed it. Gordon's the guy. He fixes the office HVAC. I never know how to say it. Is it HVAC? Is it HVAC? To help everyone feel comfortable when they return. Symbolic, hell yes, he's been able to provide comfort this season like never before. He had a couple slip-ups, but he's doing quite well for Joe, Haley, Cam, Bozdana, and Joni too, even if it was just to give her space to thrash about somewhat. And now who needs a guy? They're all going to need a guy because Gordon's not there anymore. For the record, Cameron did hear Joe about building a place in the country, but I'm feeling bad for him. As a good or great salesman, I suspect, like Boz, Joe can probably feel and distill people's positions before they even know what their actions are going to be. Yeah, because when she says that, he's like hanging up the phone. He hears her and it doesn't keep him on the phone longer. He just doesn't, he's not going there anymore right now. Like, yeah. Relaunch. I love the current Gordon and Joe so much, even if it's Gordon just being conciliatory about Joe wanting to rename the project Relaunch. God, I just want to give those guys the biggest hugs right now. They don't know what's around the corner, and I just feel for Joe now. He looks like he's feeling alone. And he is. Like, look how much loss this man has had. It really puts it into context for me. Donna's address of 1221 was a number I was searching for significance. Of course, there are numerous astrology or numerology positions on this figure, but they feel so indiscriminate that I was dissuaded from using any. Then I thought of death and religion and hoped for a silver bullet piece of scripture like Psalms 23:4. No dice. I only found scripture that would have to be bent into a pretzel to make sense per Google searching. So maybe there is one, but I didn't find it in Romans, Ezekiel, John, etc. I'm wondering whether anyone found anything with this number. Maybe there's a clock time earlier in the series, or maybe even yet to be seen where this is significant, but I'll definitely be looking for it again on future viewings. I mean, the only thing that jumps out to me is the palindrome of it, 1221. Same forwards and backwards. Maybe, I mean, I'm talking out of my butt right now, but I think about, we saw Donna and Gordon's relationship go forward in time, and as he was dying, it went backwards in time. That's probably not it, but actively soliciting other people's opinions on this because mine was not useful. Joe triggers Donna so quickly that it's surprising. It's like when we see her melt down on him in 206 at 11 minutes 28 seconds in the Mutiny House. Maybe he reminds her of someone significant in her childhood or a previous significant other before Gordon. She emotes such visceral contempt without much runway when he confronts her, yet she calls him volcanic while he's only being direct. She voices that he's won and he got everybody. Maybe it's just her level of stress in these two particular scenes. We've seen her bare her teeth with Cam and Boz, but both of those times were more argumentative in nature, whereas these scenes with Joe, he's relatively calm. If this was a rom-com, they'd be getting married in the near future. I just keep thinking about the fact that Donna was masking her feelings with drinking for this entire season. And she was angry. She was masking her anger with drinking. So whatever she was feeling as she was going to drive away at the end of 310, like that's what's coming out right now. And it might be delayed, but it's not been dealt with, at least in the direction of Joe. So maybe that answers that to some degree, that she just had a coping mechanism that wasn't allowing her to face her feelings before. And now this is what was there. And I think the fact that by the end of this scene, she and Joe land in a decent place is important in that regard, because if what I'm saying has any bearing of truth, then she's found a way to cope that's perhaps a bit healthier to get rid of the underlying anger that wasn't alcohol. After Joe gets his fingers crushed and he and Donna reset, when Joe is leaving and Donna grabs the door handle to close it, she has the same expression on her face for a split second that she had when Tripp was leaving her office. It's following Joe saying he couldn't find what he was looking for on Rover. Maybe she has Joe and Tripp in the same bucket, or maybe she was thinking back to Tripp again, or maybe it's just the same or similar expression without further significance. Good point. I don't know why they would be like occupying the same space in her brain, because I think like as much as Joe talks about the infractions she's had against him, he's had some too. And like Tripp hasn't really done anything to Donna except like kind of nice things. So I don't know, but she's annoyed with Tripp and she's probably annoyed with Joe. So maybe could be a good point. Joe is sitting in his SUV, icing his fingers in front of Donna's house, and the signature blue light and orange light we see in Donna's scenes lately is behind him. Okay, nice point. Oh my, Katie's eyes when she picks up the phone to relay the news to Donna, such a powerful expression. Donna coming out of the house to tell Joe, man, so raw feeling here. I had to pause and get up on the second watch tonight, but I sat with it on Sunday last weekend. Dry eyes aren't really an option here unless you're trying to remove yourself from the emotion and experience. It's just this episode. This episode is it's hard. Okay, quotes breaker box. Evan's got 5 quotes here. Fuse 5 combo. You're seriously not going to say anything about the haircut, Joni? Gordon saying, do you seriously think that would help? Yep, I had that one too. Fuse 4. Well, it's pretty short, like shorter than Dorothy Hamill's, but not as short as Mark Hamill's. It's somewhere mid Hamill. I have that one too. This might be the most alignment we've had, Evan. Let's see. Fuse 3 from Donna. I'm not convinced this fight gets won by the site that keeps traffic moving. I think it might go to the one that keeps users around. Prescient. Fuse 2 from Joe. Donna, look, Gordon and I are getting started on a new idea that sprang from a whiff of a hint of a nothing comment you made. And I just want to be sure, human to human, that you're not planning to do something to screw us. It's a good line. I like the whiff of a hint of a nothing. Fuse 1 from Donna. Jesus Christ, you won. Okay, you won. You got Haley and Gordon and Cam. You got everybody. What more do you want from me? Yeah. Okay. That was season 4, episode 7. Who needs a guy? Again, if you're brand new to this show and you came here for comfort, I am hoping that we can all provide that for each other here. If you are really familiar with this episode, maybe me and Evan and everybody who's been providing feedback doing, a deep dive, so you don't have to go quite that deep and you can just listen and not be as immersed in it, might be helpful in terms of uncovering some details you didn't know about before or noticed before. I love the structure of this. There's so many details that were coming to light for me as I was talking this episode through that I'm not going to forget. We're going to need to cope with a post-Gordon world now in this show. And we've got 3 more episodes. So we're just going to have to see what comes from it. But, thank you all for being on this journey with me. I feel as much as the characters of the show are a family with each other, I feel like that spirit has built with those who listen to and watch this podcast. And I want to thank you for that. And we need it more than ever in an episode like this. This is just so beautiful and so sad and so hard. So, yeah, I thank you for being on this journey with me. And now we'll all go and check out the next episode. So until next time, go out there and watch Halt and Catch Fire. Bye, everyone.